from LA.
Yeah, so all I want to know, and nobody can tell me this, right now the stock market's going crazy, up 1% today, setting new records every week. But in Trump 1, things were going, at least for investors, pretty great until COVID. Then things went to hell. So like nobody is a clairvoyant. Nobody can see the future, but I just want to know how long to be invested until Trump's mistakes stack up. Is that going to be year 3 or what? Nobody can say. Until then,
that might be true. That might be true. No one can say in the United States. So we'll go to Bangladesh and talk to Professor Sharif Rana and see what the thoughts are in the place that has zillions of people. Like 80% of the population lives right next door to Professor Sharif in Bangladesh. What are they saying over there about the Trump economy and the Trump presidency and the economy the next 4 years? What are you looking at? You also run the show World Talent Economic Forum, which you can see on the Pod TV network.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I want to congratulate the US people because they finished the 47th elections. But interesting things, Trump actually tweet before his elections about Bangladesh, that especially the Bangladesh unstable conditions. Maybe it's a political strategy that he tried to make happy the Indian voters in USA. That's why he is taking some positions about the Bangladesh present critical conditions or something like that. Beside that, there are some, after this Trump tweet, there are a lot of media coverage he get in Bangladesh because there are a lot of debate and lot of activities happening in Bangladesh because Trump tweet that there are a lot of mob killing and injustice happening in Bangladesh. But the real truth is that, yes, there are unstable conditions because of the previous political parties. Recently, the different students community, they took the powers and intellectual community actually supporting our government. Besides that, I believe that the Middle East war and Ukraine and Russia war playing a major role for economic crisis around the world. If Trump can handle this Ukraine and Russia war, on the other hand, he can help to stop this Israel and Palestine issues. Maybe it will give a positive impact on the global economy. Again, that we are living the place that through the social media, internet, lot of things happening around the world. But I believe that next time the honorable presidents in America, Donald Trump should tweet the genuine things in the Twitters or in social media, because misinformation and disinformation create a lot of problems, especially in politics, economics, and many more things. And I believe that Trump team, those who handle social media and other things, there has to be more responsible, because I'm honestly saying how Trump tweet about Bangladesh, this is not true at all. Thank you.
Okay, we will now go to Kim Calhoun and see what she has to say about the Trump presidency in the next 4 years.
Can you go to someone else? I'm sending David the link.
Oh, sending David the link. Then we'll go back to Canada with Sasha Starr.
Right. Thank you. I have to focus on this.
Thank you. I don't think that you could demand from Trump clamping down on social media, considering the Elon Musk is the primary reason why Trump presidency. He is sole owner of the Twitter, and obviously you have to consider one factor. Understand traditionally GOP, the Republican Party, was a representative of a large business in the United States. It's industrial military complex companies. It's all the leading industrial companies otherwise. And that's all being now replaced by social media companies. One of them, Twitter, but some others are for example, Facebook, which is now called Meta, or Google or others, and all these companies, they can buy several times all the military industrial complex and everything else in the United States. They can buy US government, they can buy everything what is there in the United States. So this is where the real power is. And these are how the people in the United States can be easily manipulated into anything. So the traditional power, all those big companies or so on, it's becoming a day of the past. Today is social media, it's the high-tech companies, which sometimes represent the same thing, and that's where the power is. That's why, unless Democrats will learn how to use this new power, what to do to harness this power, to learn how to use this power, they are doomed. They will never win a single election in next 75 years. So this is what Democrats have to learn. They have to understand that the only reason why the party exists is to gain power. And today, to gain power against Trump, Musk, and it's impossible. Forget it. Just sell your party and just go home and make a barbecue.
Okay, now we're going to bring in the Honorable David Walker, the former Comptroller General of the United States, who works and used to work and lives in the Tower of Power of Washington, D.C., and maybe he can enlighten us about this power of the economy and the power of Donald Trump in the next 4 years. What impact will he have?
Well, first, I live in Alexandria, Virginia, which is close to DC, but not in DC. Secondly, I didn't get all of what Sasha said, but let me kind of set the record straight. The Democrats controlled social media until Elon Musk bought X. And the government conspired with social media to censor many things. That's been shown. And they tried to do more. The reason that Kamala Harris lost this presidential race was because she was the weakest candidate Democrats have nominated in decades. She wasn't nominated until 100 days roughly before the election. So she really didn't have time to really introduce herself. She didn't address the issues that the American people were concerned about, which is the economy, inflation, the border, immigration, international stability, crime, especially in major cities. And Trump won an overwhelming victory. He won over 300 electoral votes. He won the popular vote, which for a Republican is very unusual. I don't think anybody predicted that. He took all 7 of the swing states. He made gains with Hispanics. He made gains with blacks. In addition to that, the Republicans took the Senate. They're going to have 53 members of the Senate, which means that that will help with regard to confirming Trump's cabinet and other presidential appointees. It'll help with regard to appointing, confirming judges, if you will. And it'll help to the extent that Trump tries to get anything done through budget reconciliation, which can't be filibustered. You just need a simple majority vote. It looks like the House is on the cusp of the Republicans winning the House by about the same margin that they have right now. They might pick up a couple of seats, but it's going to be a very narrow margin. However, there's a big difference when you have a Republican in the White House and Republicans control the House versus a Democrat in the White House, because when you have the opposite party in the White House as compared to the House, whichever party it is, you can have dissidents, and dissidents can have a lot more power because they have a difference of an opinion about how tough you ought to be with the opposition party. When the same party controls the White House that controls the House and the Senate, people tend to fall in line. That doesn't mean they should, but they tend to fall in line, if you will. What's going to be critical is what's going to happen over the next few months to see who the key players are going to be. He started naming some of them, but it's pretty clear to me that Trump is going to start out with several executive orders that are going to deal with at least the two big issues that he's said that he wants to deal with on day one. And those are secure the border and start taking steps to deport illegal immigrants that are guilty of criminal offenses, and the over 1 million illegal immigrants who have lost their asylum case. They've already had their chance in court. They didn't prevail. And secondly, energy policy, to be able to open up energy policy to, as he would say, drill, baby, drill, so that not only we can regain energy independence again, but that we can help our allies in Europe, in particular Western Europe, to gain energy independence from Russia over time. So those are just a few preliminary thoughts. I'm happy to go into more, but I don't know anybody who predicted as big a victory for Trump as he got. I expected him to win. I didn't expect him to win as big as he did. Kim, you had.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on some of these things. Well, actually, everything that you said. And Kamala, she only had 3 months to campaign with. I don't think she did bad, but I don't think she had the fair opportunity to truly run against Trump for the Democrats. Trump promised in his campaign that he was going to end the war before he takes office if he is elected president. And I'm curious how he intends to attempt that. As far as the immigrations go, mass deportation, I hope that we're a little more careful, because I don't think the numbers and the math was done accurate. And we still need people here to help us, do the work that Americans don't want to do. We had this conversation last show. I think that the people who are hiring the people who are crossing over and have no documentation, they need to be held accountable, because they're the lures. They're the ones that are creating the mess that, Trump spread fear on. Majority of these people aren't criminals. They aren't. They just want to work. So I think that, we need to be a little bit careful. But Elon said something that has concerned me, and that's, in order for America to rebuild, we're going to have to crash it. We're going to have to break it up, and we're going to have to struggle and suffer for a while in order to rebuild it again. And my sister had said kind of the same thing before Elon had mentioned this is, in order for us to recover the situation we're in, we're probably going to have to see a depression. What are your thoughts on that, David?
Well, first, I don't know exactly what Elon said, but I'll give you several thoughts. Keep in mind, there's well over 10 million illegal immigrants that have come across the border, during the current administration. Well over 10 million. There's a little over 1 million that have already had their day in court, and they're not eligible for asylum. So you start with them. You start with illegal immigrants who have committed with criminal offenses. That's a small subset of the over 10 million people who have come in just in the last, just in the current administration alone. So you're not going to have an attempt to try to deport over 10 million people all at once. It doesn't make sense, and it's not feasible. But we do need to recognize the difference between illegal immigration and legal immigration. We need immigration. We only have a birth rate of 1.62 per female. That means that our population will go down. At the same point in time, we need to recognize that there's a difference between a pathway to legal status and a pathway to citizenship, and that we ought to learn from our competitors around the world who have upgraded their immigration policy to focus on what's in the economic interest of the nation. And we haven't done that. We have no human capital strategy at the national level. With regard to Elon, Elon has expressed the most interest in doing what he calls a government efficiency initiative, okay? And there's been talk from time to time about the Office of Government Efficiency. I'll give you my thoughts on that. First, I called for a government transformation commission about 12 years ago. Efficiency would be a subset of that, but it's just a subset of that. In my view, the last thing you want is to create another government department. We got too many government departments already. It reminds me of the time that the AICPA, and I am a CPA, created a committee on committees because it had too many committees and it wanted to rationalize committees. At least it did rationalize the committees. My view is we do need some type of a government transformation commission which deals with what should government do, what level of government should do it, what is it trying to accomplish, how does it measure success, and how do you link resources, whether they be financial resources, human resources, or regulatory authority, whatever else, to try to achieve that. In my view, government's grown too big, promised too much, subsidized too many, lost control of the budget, does not have a strategic plan, does not manage for results. And I think that there's an opportunity to be able to consolidate, to devolve, to eliminate. I think about this. I mean, I go back, and I'm going to come to Rick in a minute, but I go back to my experience at GAO. You know, when I ran GAO, we ended up developing our first ever strategic plan, which, again, let me repeat, the federal government still doesn't have one since 1789. Okay. Secondly, the federal government doesn't have key national indicators: economic, diplomatic, national security, social indicators. They don't have indicators to be able to determine what are you trying to accomplish, what's working, what's not working, what do we get rid of, what do we, place more emphasis on. At GAO, we did that. We eliminated 1/3 of our offices. We eliminated a layer of management. We consolidated the number of entities from 35 to 13. We fundamentally changed our performance metrics. We reformed our technology, our human capital systems. We engaged in a range of other partnerships. And the result was we were 13% smaller, 50 to 100% more productive, and 3 times the outcome-based results on ROI. What we did is transferable and scalable to the rest of government, but it takes a concerted effort and support from the president, and we'll see whether that happens.
All right, so I have 2 questions for you. So Trump and Musk are, not entirely competent. So my question 1 is, whatever they do, is that going to end up being better than not? And 2, can you get yourself hired by this government because you do know what you're doing?
Well, first, you got to keep in mind, you have to separate what can be done through executive authority and what's going to require legislation. Okay? Certain things can be done through executive authority, although I think one of the things that needs to be done, and I've been calling for this for years, no matter who the president is, no matter which party controls the Congress, the president needs broader reorganization authority, broader authority to be able to reorganize the government without eliminating certain type of activities. In other words, if you actually want to eliminate something, you're going to have to, in all likelihood, get congressional approval. All right. But right now we got too many departments, too many agencies, and every one that you have more overhead associated with it, and you have more turf associated with it, and people trying to protect their interests, and you have more of an opportunity for duplication, overlap, redundancy, and gaps, and so that's something that needs to be pursued. Look, nobody's perfect. Whether or not I would have an opportunity to be part of this, I think there's a decent chance that I would, because in all candor, I don't think there's, let's just say I'm one of the most experienced persons in the country on these kinds of issues. And I have credibility on both sides of the aisle, both the Republican side and the Democrat side. I've been appointed by presidents of both political parties. But we'll see. I mean, that's up to the new president. And I'm not seeking anything, although, I think I could contribute in the right role.
I think he should be appointed, definitely. One of the concerns I've spoke with several people who were backstage during Elon's campaigning with Trump and stuff, and things that were overheard. But would it be a conflict of interest? He is one of the world's leading people in having contracts with our government. He's billions and billions, if not trillions of dollars in the past 10 years from our government. Would it be a conflict of interest if he were assigned to oversee those government divisions that actually regulate his contract?
Well, first, I think personally, I think Elon is brilliant. Okay,
I do too.
and I think that he could clearly contribute to an effort like this. All right. At the same point in time, he's CEO to several private sector companies, which requires time. Some of those companies have major contracts with the federal government, and therefore there is a conflict there. I think one of the things you're going to have to think through is how best to involve Elon. They're going to have, full-time people focused on this. They're going to have to be subject to all the ethics rules, all the conflict rules, all the financial, rules, if you will. To me, the best way to probably involve Elon in it is to have him as chair of some type of an advisory group rather than head of the thing, and make him a special government employee, which I am right now on the Defense Business Board. I've got a meeting the next 2 days of the Defense Business Board, which I was when I was a trustee of Social Security and Medicare, which was a presidential appointment with Senate confirmation. By making somebody a special government employee, you can spend up to 60 days a year being involved in a particular government activity. You have to disclose all your financial interest and all of your outside interests, but you don't have to dispose of them. But you have to recuse yourself from anything that is a direct or appearance of a conflict of interest. I think that's the way that you can have Elon involved, okay, with appropriate transparency and safeguards. But realistically, we don't need another department. And realistically, he probably doesn't have the time, nor would he want to do what he has to do from a financial standpoint to be a full-time government employee. Who's gonna? David had his.
I have a
Thank
question.
you.
Okay.
Okay. Now that
David,
the spotlight's on me here.
yeah.
From what I recall with Elon, even Elon, who's owner of Tesla, he was not in favor of the environmental regulate or the electric vehicle mandates. So he wants that one actually repealed, if I remember correctly. The other part with Elon is that he's actually expressed interest, and Ron Paul, if I remember right, has accepted that they would both work together on this. And if anybody's a critic of federal overspending and the Federal Reserve Bank, it's Ron Paul. So the two of them together, that's going to be an explosive, wonderful combination, I believe. So we'll have to see what happens from there.
Well, the question
The neat thing about Elon is that he can't buy him. That's the neat thing. He has his own stuff, and as long as he's able to keep doing what he's doing, I think it should be fine, assuming that it's all his conflicts are disclosed and that they're not in his way, and he's still abiding by all the government rules and regulations, which he's expressed frustrations with in the past. So,
well, that's what
happens there.
My personal view is one of the things that not enough attention is being placed on right now is the Office of Management and Budget. The director of the Office of Management and Budget is responsible for budget issues, obviously, government-wide management, regulatory issues, government-wide, and would be the point person on interfacing on any particular type of commission that might be a transformation or efficiency commission or a fiscal sustainability commission. That is a really, really critical role. It's not one that you hear the media talking about a lot because they want to talk about state and defense and treasury, and I can understand that. But if you have a president that actually wants to make major transformational change and they've only got 4 years to do it, then he needs to act sooner rather than later with regard to that role. And I come back to what I said. I hear what you're saying about Ron Paul and Elon, and I agree that they can add a hell of a lot of value. But I think the best way to do it is through making them involved in some type of advisory or commission or something like that, so you can avoid a lot of the the conflict issues and that we've talked about before.
Professor Sharif Rana from Bangladesh.
Yeah, thank you. As like glass ceiling factor is my PhD thesis and it's published in many languages. I have a full sympathy about Kamala Harris, and because she is very dynamic, she definitely a very good leader. And in terms of economic sustainability and everything, leadership is a very important factor. So I want to ask questions to Mr. David. Why USA people cannot welcome women leaders in American president positions? Even the same things we saw in the previous, actually, Trump win actually 2 women against 2 women. And it's very important factor for me because even I sent email to you and Kimberly and Mr. Nick that I want to do research on that particular area, because what is the mindset of the US people? Why they cannot welcome a dynamic woman leaders as a president in their countries? Because Kamala Harris and Hillary Clinton, both of them actually dynamic leaders. They are hardworking. They are very, very influential. But somehow Trump managed these things, and Trump win against all of the women. This is the things you don't think that.
Well, first, I would respectfully suggest that the reason that Kamala Harris lost had nothing to do with the fact that she was a woman. It had nothing to do with the fact that she has, African American heritage or Indian heritage. It has absolutely nothing to do with that. Frankly, she's not viewed as being very competent. The primary responsibility that she was given was the border, and you can debate what her title was, and you can debate but it was a failure. It was a dismal failure. Secondly, she didn't conduct one press conference in 100 days. She didn't have meaningful interaction with regard to the public during those 100 days. You're finding out now that she spent millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars, to have celebrities come and draw crowds rather than interacting directly with the people. She didn't address the issues that the American people were concerned about, which I talked about before. Now let's go back to Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton was extremely qualified. No ifs, ands, or buts. She was extremely qualified, eminently better qualified than Kamala Harris. All right. Hillary Clinton lost for 2 reasons. One, she wasn't likable. All right. And number 2, Trump talked about taking on the establishment and making major changes, and people were ready for change. There are plenty of women who I think are capable of being president of the United States. And there's no question in my mind that I think we will have a one president at some point in time. And one of which also has Indian heritage, who is the former governor of South Carolina. There are several governors, current and former governors that are women that have done a good job. Okay, Nikki Haley is who I'm talking of. I mean, I would have no problem at all voting for Nikki Haley. Absolutely no problem at all. Okay, you've had people like Condi Rice. I mean, Condi Rice is incredibly capable. She doesn't want to be president. Politics is not an integrity and a merit-based endeavor. So the bottom line is that I think we will have a woman president at some point in time. But the first and foremost criteria is you want somebody who is qualified, who you think will do a good job, no matter what their race, gender, ethnicity is. Rick.
So when there's the car wreck, in America, a big car wreck, the insurance companies and the courts all have to get together and decide what percent responsible each party was.
Unless it's no fault, unless it's a no fault state. But go ahead.
All right, but okay. But with this election was a car wreck for the Democrats. So yeah, you can figure out what percent every factor was. And I'd agree with David that the two women who were beaten by Trump, their gender was, I don't know, no more than 10% of the equation. That Hillary, as David said, she gave some people the creeps, high disapproval, even though she was highly qualified. And then there was the FBI stuff right at the end. So it wasn't, and with Harris, all the factors David mentioned, that she wasn't nominated, that when Biden came in, Biden had 50 years of experience in politics, and people valued that. So their femaleness had a very limited impact on their not getting elected.
And let me mention one other thing, Professor. We had a very unusual situation this time, okay? Because we've only had one other time in the history of our country that a president ran for re-election after losing in the prior election. And therefore, when Trump ran, he was kind of quasi-incumbent. He had been president before, and therefore it was difficult for somebody to knock him out of being the Republican candidate, all right? Because he had already been there. In fact, one of the frustrating things is people say this guy's going to be a dictator and he's going to do this, he's going to do that. They forget two things. He's already been president, and he wasn't a dictator when he was president before. And secondly, people who say that are ignorant of the checks and balances in our Constitution. There are plenty of checks and balances in our Constitution to prevent anybody from being a dictator, including Donald Trump.
Mark Lee.
Yeah, just here's some good news that I think you'll enjoy, David, and all along those lines. As I was saying on World Edition, I had the pleasure on Friday of hearing Reverend Barber talk about the war on poverty and the fact that the minimum wage is an issue that won in a number of places when it was on the ballot and everything. But at the event that I was at, I heard a number of people that were there that were upset over the loss with Kamala Harris and everything. They brought up something that you've been a big part of as well, because a number of people at this particular event were running the idea of a third party candidacy. So I'm wondering, are we going to hear a stronger view from not just the right, but from the left as well? Because there were a number of people that, because they were frustrated with the results, are like, hey, maybe it's time to have a third party. Because I even mentioned you in the fact that you were part of No Labels and everything, but it did seem like it has risen its head among the liberal community as well.
Well, there are several alternative parties that exist already. And Mark, as you know, I co-moderated a presidential debate of candidates from three different parties: the Green Party, the Libertarian Party, and the Constitution Party. And there are some other minor parties out there as well. At the present point in time, while the country was very dissatisfied with the choices that it was given, 70% wanted a third option. And that was with Biden or Harris. They both felt that we needed another option. But that didn't materialize. At the present point in time, No Labels is not inclined to pursue creating another party. But they are very much actively engaged in trying to build bridges between the parties and trying to be able to expand on the Problem Solvers Caucus, the bicameral group, and in the 2026 elections to elect more independents, more unaligned people who commit to country over party, because I think both parties have a problem right now. They're very different. The other thing is that last numbers I saw, 51% of registered voters were unaffiliated or independent, like me. And the other parties were like about 25% each. All right. Although the Republicans have gained recently. I mean, the Democrats were ahead of the Republicans for a long time, but as we saw in this last election, the Republicans have gained, have gained more registrations, and the Democrats have lost registrations. And I think part of that is because the energy in the Democratic Party was not in the sensible center. The energy in the Democratic Party was on the left, and the country, I think, is, it's center right with regard to economic and fiscal issues. It's center to center left on social issues. That's where the country is. But unfortunately, that's not where the parties are. And
that's very much true and everything. Just really quickly, I can just interject in that because one of the things that Reverend Barber said that shocked the audience, and like there was a small audience of a few hundred and everything, was that he is actually an independent. So even though he's involved with the war on poverty and the repairs of the breach, he actually said, "This may shock y'all, but I actually am a independent and not a party affiliated." But like I said, I know he's definitely, and even Martin Luther King talked about that war on poverty and minimum wage being part of that war on poverty. So do you think that we can have a successful war on poverty, and should we have a war on poverty and everything like that? Because there is a sizable amount of people that are in poverty, the amount of children in poverty, even in our developed nation, is shameful in my mind.
well, the sad but simple truth is that we declared a war on poverty in the 1960s, and the poverty rate's about the same now as it was in the 1960s, except for the elderly.
Right.
And the reason, the lowest poverty rate by age group are seniors. And one of the reasons that is because of Social Security and Medicare. Okay. The highest poverty rate in our country is children who represent the future. I think if you're going to deal with this issue, Mark, we have, yes, you can consider raising the federal minimum wage, but many states have already raised their minimum wage way above what the federal minimum wage is. I mean, if you will, states are sovereign entities. They can raise their minimum wage if they want, and most of them have, okay? But I think we need to go to the real root cause. The real root cause includes things like our K through 12 education system, okay? Training and retraining, and a number of other factors where we need to give people more capability, all right, so that they have more opportunity, so that they can end up getting better positions, make more money. I think, we want to do something about poverty, but I think it's not just throwing money at people. In fact, what we don't want to do is create a dependency where people become so dependent on the government and that they don't have the ability or the tools to be able to do things on their own. That's a vicious cycle. That's not a cycle we want to be in my view.
David, my question to you is this: how much did inflation affect this election? From what we've heard from a lot of people around the world, especially in the United States, is that grocery costs were up, gas was up, housing was way up, and all of a sudden inflation was big in the last 4 years. How much do you think impact that had on the election?
I think it was number one or number two. And what the Democrats failed to recognize is, while it's true that inflation has come down from its peak of 9.1% in June of 2022, that aggregate inflation during this administration is over 20%, and in some categories much higher than that. In addition to that, mortgage rates are over double what they were. And so as a result, people were saying, yeah, I hear you that the rate of inflation has come down, but the aggregate amount of inflation that we've had during the last 3.5 years is very high and unacceptable and have not kept pace with real wages. The second issue was the border and immigration. I think the economy, in particular, inflation was number one, and the border and immigration was number two.
Okay. Well, when the candidates came out fighting, they tended to fight on personality as opposed to politics and the positions. Do you think that had an effect, that rather than going directly to the
Absolutely.
issues, as opposed to going to attack people ad hominem arguments and attack people's personality. Do you think that had a big impact on
Yeah, I
this
did.
whole
I mean, I said, look, we need the campaign to be about policies rather than personalities, and the future rather than the past. And it obviously wasn't enough that way, but I'm pleased and proud to say that the free and equal debate that I co-moderated in Hollywood in October, that involved those other three party candidates, that it was civil, that we focused on the issues that the American people cared about, and that the candidates answered the questions they were asked. And that is a approach that needs to be taken with future debates. And I think, frankly, one of the things you need to do is you need to have moderators that actually know something about the topics.
Thank
You
you.
know, I remember I remember at least one time I said, "Let me repeat my question."
Yeah.
Good point. Good point, Counselor.
Good point. David, you mentioned, the extreme interest rates on mortgages as well as other lending. What will it take to get that back under control where people can afford to go get mortgage loans and maybe some other loans to get their life back under control? What will it take to reduce that mortgage rate?
We got to put our finances in order.
We do, but what needs to happen up here first?
Well,
What needs to happen in the government for that mortgage rate to get
first,
back?
well, let's talk about what caused excess inflation and what caused the higher interest rates. Okay, excessive spending fueled inflation. In addition to that, the Federal Reserve keeping interest rates too low, too long, self-dealing in our own debt by buying most of the new debt that was issued as a result of the deficits. So we need to go to the heart and deal with that. The other thing is let's look at some recent signals. The Fed reduced its rate, 50 basis points in September and another 25 basis points recently, and yet long-term borrowing rates are up. And the reason that long-term borrowing rates are up is because we haven't done anything to deal with the fiscal cancer that we have, the tremendous imbalance between our revenues and expenses, the growing liabilities and unfunded obligations that threaten our future position in the world and our future standard of living at home. And so we need to recognize that reality and start taking some steps to deal with it. And one of the things that that I'm working on, and I'm hoping that we're going to have some really big news before the end of this year, is efforts to try to get a constitutional amendment to limit how much debt we can take on as a percentage of the economy. We can't have an unlimited credit card. We can't continue to mortgage the future of our country, our families, and future generations like we are. And until we demonstrate that we've got the willingness and ability to do that, it's going to be difficult for rates to come down, in my view.
What role does
what about-
Powell and the Federal Reserve play in this? Because you and I sat and visited them one time and had a beautiful conversation on some of this. What role can they play or do they play?
Well, they, I think unintentionally, but did, enabled excessive spending, but and supported unintentionally, in my belief, the modern monetary theory, which said that deficits and debt don't matter, as long as you can borrow in your own reserve currency, unless and until you have excess inflation. Well, the fact is, in the first 2 years of this administration, the Democrats controlled the Senate, the House, and the White House, and they aggressively followed the modern monetary theory. And the Federal Reserve, as I said, kept interest rates too low, too long, bought too much of that debt, monetized it, okay? And as a result, that ended up helping to fuel excessive inflation. My personal view is we need reforms on the Fed too. And, the Fed says that they have 3 mandates. Actually, sometimes they say they only have 2. Okay. To me, their number one mandate is to maintain stable prices. In other words, modest rates of inflation. Their target is 2%. So that should be number one, first and foremost. Number 2, promote macroeconomic growth. If you promote macroeconomic growth, that will help with employment. That will help in a number of different areas. Okay. The third mandate that they were giving several decades ago, I think, should be eliminated, which is to focus on trying to achieve full employment. I don't think that's their job, because full employment has a lot to do with things like education policy, immigration policy, welfare policy, tax policy, and the Fed has nothing to do with that. So the other thing I think that has to happen is there's got to be limitations on the ability of the Federal Reserve to self-deal in federal debt, which is short-term gain to hold down interest rates, long-term pain with regard to when you end up unravel those positions, which they will do over time. So I think that we need major reforms on the fiscal side, which is tax and spending policy. Okay, but we also need reforms on the monetary side as well.
Dave, do you think the Fed will be able to keep its independent status, or it will go under the Trump's government?
I think it'll be able to maintain its independent status. I think Powell has his position until sometime in 2026, as I recall. He's not likely to get reappointed. The president can ask for his resignation, but he can't require him to resign. There are probably things that he could do to make life tough for him, I would imagine. But I think it will maintain its independence. But as I said, I think intentionally or unintentionally, the Fed actually enables some irresponsible fiscal policy. And the Fed has said, and several Fed chairs, including Chairman Powell, to his credit, okay, going back, several Fed chairs have said, that Congress needs to get fiscal policy under control. That is the primary issue. And I'm hoping that the new administration will make some progress on that because, the fuse is lit on our debt bomb and time's not running in our favor. I was asked recently, and it's supposed to be published any day now for International Economics Magazine, I was asked to estimate what percentage chance would there be that there would be a global debt crisis within the next 3 to 5 years. And I said, under our current path, 70%. And one of the members of the board that I chair, the Federal Fiscal Sustainability Foundation, Steve Hankey, who's a PhD, he's a professor at Johns Hopkins. He's rated as one of the top 10 economists in the world internationally. He said, I'm lowballing it. But my point is that we got a problem. It's growing every day. We need to start taking steps to address it. When you have a president who cannot be reelected, you have an opportunity. And I hope that he capitalizes on that.
Yeah, David. Other David.
If we're going to be talking about the next campaign, as far as I can figure out, first, Kamala Harris, unfortunately, terrible candidate. The only thing she could campaign on, pretty much, that she could seem to articulate was women's rights. And unfortunately, that fell on deaf ears. And besides that, if it was able to be turned around, I think they should have been able to do it by now. I'm looking forward to 2028. I think it's going to be Newsom versus Vance. J.D. Vance has been very powerful in the media, a little bit more of a soft-spoken Trump, yet very assertive. Definitely knows how to challenge the media narrative. And as far as Governor Gavin Newsom, he got a mandate because we passed Proposition 36 overwhelmingly by 70% of the vote here in California, which is basically saying we don't want petty theft. We don't want nonviolent crime. We don't want that anymore. We need to get the handle on this. And I think he's kind of in a little meltdown of his own. And now with the states trying to say we're going to Trump-proof our states against some of these things they want to do, Newsom is the most handsome and the most articulate Democratic candidate that they're going to have. It will be Newsom. He will be I'm predicting that. I would put money on it, that he will be the next Democratic contender for the presidency, and we'll see what happens. That will be a showdown.
My
I
personal,
agree.
my
He was
personal
very
view is-
sorry.
pardon me 1 second, Rick. I'll come right to you, buddy.
All right.
I apologize.
That's
My
okay.
personal view is we got a lot of work that needs to be done in the next 4 years, and I don't want to think for a nanosecond about what's going to happen in 2028. Although I will tell you that if you looked at the debate between Ron DeSantis and Newsom, I thought Newsom did terrible on that debate. The biggest example that I can recall was the moderator of that debate did something that should be done in a standard practice. He put up data. And then he asked the question. And here's the one that I remember the most, David, and that was he put up data on what the income tax rates were in California versus Florida, what the property tax rates were, what the sales tax rates were, what the inheritance tax rates were, whatever. He put up all that data. It was clear and compelling, and yet Newsom came back and said, "Oh, our middle class pays lower tax rates than Florida." I mean, it was like, I'm going, this guy's he's on a different planet. Rick, go ahead.
Well, we pay less than 0.5% in property tax here in California.
Property tax is low because of the constitutional amendment that passed.
Prop 13. Yeah,
that's correct. That's correct. That's why.
But anyway, Newsom was smart. He kept his head down during election 2024 so he wouldn't get tainted by it. And so, yeah, he's in a position to step in 2028, and he's got great hair. Hair wins presidential elections. Kennedy, Reagan, Clinton, Bill Clinton.
Somebody
I'm going to challenge you on that. Trump does not have great hair, although he is known for his hair. I'm just throwing that out there.
I'm just saying that it's a plus.
It is a plus, but you can buy a tube.
I've yet to see a convincing. In the Biden Trump election of 2020, both of them had surgery on their hair, like me. The whole front of my hair is moved from the back of my head. They plugged it into the front. Biden had anyway.
Point of information.
That's correct.
Point of information for all the people in the Pod TV network. Bob Ferguson won the governorship of state of Washington, and he has been on our show before. He's actually Sasha. He's a chess master, and that's the reason he was on our show. It had nothing to do with his politics. He was actually on because of chess. He won the Washington State Chess Championship twice.
Made the right moves.
Wow.
Well, I don't know if he's going to make any moves nationally, but he was the Attorney General of Washington State. Then he moved up. Now he's the governor of Washington State. Who knows? He may be looking for a political run. Another point of information, Tom Barkin, who's the president of the Federal Reserve of Richmond. He's Federal Reserve Bank president of Richmond. He's a personal friend of mine, and he used to come to my house all the time in Tampa, Florida, which he may be making a run for becoming the head of the Federal Reserve. You can look up Tom Barkin. So anyway, that I thought you'd find that interesting. We'll see if we can get Bob Ferguson on at a future date. But right now, we're not going into the future, we're going into the past, because we're going to be leaving everybody here shortly because we're at the end of the hour, and our engineers will go crazy if we don't finish up on time. So we want to thank our David M. Walker, the former Comptroller General of the United States, and of course Professor Sharif from Bangladesh, who's being in across the world, Sasha Starr, and me from Europe, and Kim from the United States, and David from the United States. And we'll see you next week on Economics with the Honorable David M. Walker. Take care.
So, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it, right? We've got, this whole economic thing going on where you know, these people are having these conversations about economics, and they're having these conversations about important topics that it doesn't seem as if we as African Americans or Black Americans are putting ourselves into the room. So I'm not going to hold you guys up. I'm going to drop the link because I saw some discourse in my comments, and I'd like people to be able to come up and speak their voice. So I'm going to put this up here. I'm going to go grab myself some water. If you want to come up and have civil discourse, let's do so. Let's try to keep it respectable so that, you know, let's not resort to calling people names. You can feel however you feel, but just like as you saw on that panel, there were all sorts of opinions. You can see, or you could read from, you know, kind of how some of the people on the panel were speaking, their political view or their leaning, yet they were all able to keep it civil, and or at the end of the day, keep it to the point of the politics at hand, which is what matters, right? So I'm gonna go grab me a drink, and I'll be right back. When I come back, if nobody's up, I might show a brief article, and then we will call it a day. I'll be right back. Actually, before I do that, let me put something up for you guys' entertainment while I go grab my drink, because I'm going to make me a cup of hot tea, right? In fact, hold on, let me show you guys. What's up? Okay, she's already here. So she'd go ahead, carry on. I'll be right back.
All right, cool. I mean, at the end of the day, my echoing? Okay. At the end of the day, man, it comes down to it that where the Democrats weren't kind of relating to the people. It was more of the bash Trump thing. And no matter how many people I talked to about Kamala, each time it was always they would always say, well, Trump is not better than Kamala. I would pick the lesser two evils, it will be Kamala. And I'm like, well, that's from your opinion, you know. And then we start going over policies. Oh, the people's talking about black people are gonna be slaves. I'm like, just like the guy was saying in the video, we act like Trump wasn't president before. Like, how is this, you know, being spewed to the point of, you know, he's never been president or something? I mean, I can come from that standpoint if he's never been president, but for him to have been president and he's going to implement this new world order on people, you know, he's going to put us in so much debt. You know, when me and one of my friends, our biggest debate was about the educational system because both of us have kids, both of us are married. We're in two different tax brackets, but at the same time, you know, the focus on our kids and our future, you know. And the problem with me telling him that you have to teach your kids a little more outside of school, and he said, well, I don't have the time. I'm saying, well, I get tutors. It's not just me sitting down with my son and helping him with his homework. I got tutors for that. I go make the money. So me being a working class man that, you know, goes out there and hit that pavement, I'm looking at, you know, what is going to be the options for the people that, you know, actually works. Like, and that's what everybody was saying. Even I seen a video talking about the Latino community and the Hispanics and all that. Their focus was the same thing. They're working class, so they want to see how the common man is going to be represented in this election, you know. And it played itself out towards the end, in which we seen where it was too much focus on certain agendas. You know, even with the birth thing, they were pushing that heavy that women are going to lose their, oh, you're going to lose your rights. Trump already said that he's going to let every state make that decision. So if your state doesn't make the right decision for, you know, women getting abortion, take it up locally, you know. And my thing was, the biggest thing with me was the money aspect. Looking at me working, I've always worked two jobs to a degree, and, you know, always had something side going on. I never let pretty much one job kind of deter how I'm gonna make my money, because if I'm only leading with this one, job to be doing something and something happens, that's most Americans now. When you get laid off, like, where you gonna get income from? You're gonna get unemployment only up to a certain time, and after that, that unemployment is gonna be cut off. You know, and having a side hustle or something. Shout out to Dr. Dunbar, Big Discussion 76. We're always talking about, what are you going to do after your 9 to 5? What about working on your 5 to 9? When you get off work, where you just going to go home, watch some TV. You could have an Etsy store selling something, selling stuff on OfferUp, or, having a part-time job, Uber, whatever you can do to make extra money, because if you behold yourself to your job, and if something ever happens, what are the skills you can pick up? I mean, it's easy to go jump in the car and do Uber, but then you got to get acclimated to how this works. What is the peak paying time? If you don't know these things, then it's going to kind of hinder you from making money. I mean, it's something simple as just turning on an app and go drive, but it's a little more to it, in the long run. But like I said, just when it came down to, in my opinion, they wasn't focused more on the working class people. They was kind of focused on the celebrities. I mean, prime example, Kamala didn't even, budget her rallies and her campaign trail right. She still owed people from campaigning. She was paying all these celebrities. They had talks of YouTubers and stuff like that getting paid to promote Kamala. They had a guy who was a Republican showed the letter live on his channel, like stuff like that. You dropping the ball by getting it done by any means necessary. I mean, you back?
Yeah, I'm back. I don't know what happened.
I'm just gonna break with this. I mean, at the end of the day, she was more focused on just doing her thing than being focused on the people, and that's where she lost her touch.
So I concur there. I don't know if you saw, the gentleman speaking, but one of the things, a lot of them felt like Condoleezza Rice could have been a quality candidate, right? So,
Yeah.
I look at it like this. The reality is, come on up, Miss Queen. I definitely want to hear your input. So I'm one of the 20% of black males who voted for Donald Trump. And that almost may have been, partially against my own interest, because I have my wife works for the federal government. When I was doing real estate, he shutting down the government injured me and my wife, right? The reality is he has a lot of things that went well for this country, right? When he was in office last, we didn't have any wars, right? So, hey, Miss Thompson, let me let you up here. So, when he was in office last, we didn't have any wars, right? A lot of people got to benefit from, I guess, the economic stimulus payment, right? I didn't, my wife didn't, because we both made a certain amount substantially over what it was that would qualify you for that. For me, again, it was the whole economics thing, right? For me, it was because I'm in business for myself, and he's going to deregulate a lot of stuff. That makes my job easier. That makes it easier for me to provide for my family, which in turn makes it easier for me to support my community. I'll pause there, Miss Queen. What you got to say?
What are y'all talking about?
So right now, I'm just kind of continuing. I really dropped this because I wanted you and Prince Pierre to be able to speak your points, as opposed to being able to have to type it out, because sometimes typing it out, things get lost in translation. Your full intent behind your statement might not be picked up when somebody's reading it. For example, I see you say only people that have supported white supremacy voted for him. I disagree with that. um, you know, realistically, both sides of white supremacy, right? And as black
No,
people,
both
if we
sides are
want,
not white supremacy.
Say
Only
again.
one side is trying. I say no. Only one side is trying to take away human rights. No, I
So
definitely don't agree with it.
right. Let's look at the taking away of civil rights. Let's look at things like a lot of people say, the Democratic Party is for poor people. So then that means that we want to be perpetually poor, perpetually with the government, with their thumbs on the pulse of what we're doing, providing so on and so forth programs, right? I make too much to get any help and too little to get any tax benefits. But the reality is both sides don't care about us as seen by the laws that have been put into place. The only way we as black people get what we want is to actually vote with our dollars by creating PACs and super PACs and then having our agenda looked at. Prime example, the contract for Black America, when Biden told Ice Cube, wait till I get elected and then I'll look at your contract for Black America. Do you know that Donald Trump prior to, he also approved Juneteenth. And then Joe Biden gave us only Juneteenth. Dave, what's
We
going
don't
on,
even
brother?
have a black agenda, so that's nonsense. Black people don't even participate in politics correctly to be complaining about anything. So that's neither here nor there. Fact of the matter is, that man got up there, threatened this country several times, threatened our democracy several times, and people still got up there and voted for him. And I hope everybody get what they deserve. That's all I can say.
Oh, definitely. Again, I find it short-sighted that we talk about this whole white supremacy thing, but the reality is, what have we done over the last 60 years to have anything different? We haven't, right? We've continually voted majority Democrat, and we've continually gotten uh, soft promises that haven't done anything. Again, as a black
We
registered
haven't put any policies in place to get anything.
right
That's
because we
neither
haven't
here
put
nor
our
there. This
dollars
man
behind
sat
them.
up here and he's blatantly racist. Blatantly. Like, we not gonna sit up here and act like we don't know white supremacy when we
So
see it.
he's blatantly
Or you
racist.
can.
He gave more money.
22% of black men did act like they don't see that. And that's gonna be y'all problem.
Right. So he didn't give substantial amounts of money to HBCUs. He didn't.
No, he did not. And every time he says that, those HBCUs get right on Twitter and correct what he actually did. Biden
Right.
gave them HBCUs
So
more
back
money
in
than Trump did.
1988, Oprah Winfrey didn't ask him to run for president or ask him if he wasn't going to run for president. He very vehemently promoted Jesse Jackson, who fumbled the bag, right? So again, as black people, if we want these policies, number one, even if we know, regardless of how we feel about the person, we have to actually get into the room with the people, and you have to speak to them. That's how politics works. Unfortunately, we get very emotional and oh, he's a racist. I'm not voting for him. Well, how racist is that?
Well, we wouldn't speak to him in the first place. Policy
But we
is
did.
done through
Everybody
your
has to
state
speak up because he ran
representatives.
for president
And black, like I said before, black people don't properly participate in the politics.
because we
I
don't use
spent
our dollars.
this whole year on my channel educating people how to properly vote for one and letting them know if they didn't like things in their city that they need to participate in
Absolutely.
their local election. I spent the
Absolutely.
whole year sitting up here telling people about positions that were electable positions because they didn't know. So sitting up here talking about what the president is going to do is nonsense. Not only is he sitting in the highest seat of the land, he has a whole red government that generally puts out things that are against our best interest as a demographic of people. So as far as black folk are concerned, black people that know better need to get out and do more education
Right.
with
So
people because
I'm gonna
laws are
say
not made by the president. Laws are made by the state representatives and the people that sit
exactly,
in the seats of Congress.
exactly, which is why I did things like when there was the mayoral conference, or there was a mayoral candidate here who was a registered independent who ran on the Republican ticket. Do you know what I did? I went to his $600 dinner and I asked him about things like Lawrence Smith Fields, which was one of the things that a lot of Black YouTube was sitting here yapping back and forth about, but nobody did anything. Mayor Justin Elicker walks down my block very often where I live, right? And I was the only person who looked like me that was in that meeting. Yet I got all these
And how
Black
many people that look like you did you reach out to and say, hey, this is going on? I think we should attend it.
You'd be surprised. How many people do you think I do that on a daily basis with? And how many people do you think listen?
I like how you didn't answer a direct question.
I did. I said you'd be surprised.
You did not. You said, I do
Well, I
this
can
on a
tell you
daily
this. I
basis.
have a
I
relative
asked
who's
you
in
a
business. That's
direct
one.
question.
I have a relative who's in business. One. How many did you reach out to?
I did not attend this event that you're talking
I'm
about.
not asking about the event. How many did you reach out to
I'm
do?
asking you how many people you reached out in this event that you're talking about, because if you're gonna criticize black people
Well,
for not
this
being
event
in the
is not
room,
something I can
did you
invite
reach
people
out to
to.
black people so they could be in the room? That's the
So,
question.
do you know how politics work? Obviously, you don't, because I can't
So
invite.
you're not gonna answer the question.
I'm answering
So
the
I'm gonna
question.
take that as a you didn't invite anybody. Okay, so
I
go ahead.
can't.
I'm listening.
Can I invite people to your party? No, I can't. Only you can invite people to your party. So if you're gonna have a question, make a question poignant. Don't make it all
No,
in.
because that's incorrect as well. Because if it was invitation only, that's what you would have said. So the thing
Well,
is,
no,
you
no, no, no,
didn't
no, no.
invite or tell
Again,
anybody anything, and rather than take accountability
I
for that, you want
said
to dance around
I
the
was
issue.
there. How many
But
people
you can
were at?
continue on with your story.
Right. I'm going to continue on with my facts while you continue on with baseless opinions. But let's stop
No,
there.
it's not a baseless opinion. It's an actual fact, which is why.
Baseless opinions. So
No,
baseless
don't
opinions.
ask me, and
Baseless
then
baseless opinions. So
don't ask
Dave, how are you today?
and
Dave, how are you today?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for asking. I saw your link in the chat and I thought, hey, I'll go ahead and click on it. And I came into the wrong part of the conversation. It
No.
seems
Yeah. So your thoughts, thank you for having that panel. Obviously, I obviously as a Black American am looking at things from, the Black scope. But you definitely being in those rooms, thoughts, opinions, what have you.
Eh, thoughts and opinions. I just like sharing my thoughts and opinions where I can. I'm not necessarily in those rooms all the time. When I get the email that says, hey, we're going to do a thing on this topic, I'm like, hey, I'm there. Anything to spend some time with David Walker, Nick Pellavita, who's the host of that show, and just we're bouncing around ideas and such. And what's interesting is that there's a variety of opinions there, and I love it. We're all respectful of each other, and we're just listening on everything. As far as that particular episode and topic, yeah, we're talking about Trump and what we're anticipating for the overall economy. By the way, Alonso, thank you for your participation. And LR, I can't remember his name. I'm sorry. I have to go back through my chat. Nobody else seems to comment. So I'm glad when I restream that and you guys participate and then they start showing comments. I don't think they get that from anybody else. So I'm hoping that's why they keep inviting me on, because I have a little bit more audience and I'll restream it and people will actually, comment and they bring it. And now that I'm putting my own comments out there, then they click on it. So that's my way of speaking out when I can't get called on. So
Fair enough.
I found a cheat code. I'm gonna keep doing that. I didn't do that before. So yeah, there's a lot of different things and such. And this election was, I mean, everybody says it was a slam dunk. It was a huge red wave. I'm looking at the numbers. I'm like, it wasn't that big. It was big in certain areas, but marginally. And yes, it's a big thing in terms of how everything's counted and how everything gets represented and such. Yes, I get that, but we're still essentially. I'll declare it. America's in a cold war with itself. We are so divided on certain things. Yet that's how the votes seem to show up. When we meet and we talk about these, we can usually come to common understandings, common beliefs, common shared values in most things. Now, how to implement those things, who knows? And I don't have the answer on that. And I certainly cannot necessarily speak to anything of the Black community. I am melanin impaired in that area, let alone I'm just not there. I want to champion the empowerment of everybody best I can, even though I don't know how. And Alonzo, you and I, we have talked about that at length, not just financially, but financial education, financial literacy and such, and however I can help. But I'm not necessarily the one to be the torchbearer to all those people. We had, what was his name? I can't remember. Eugene. He did that webinar, 3 years ago or so?
Yeah,
and I asked the question. Yeah, and I asked the question, how can I help? I am not going to put on, because it would look so bad, I'm not going to put on a seminar saying, Black Americans, come to my seminar to learn from the white guy how to manage your finance. I ain't going to do that. It would be so, I would make headlines for all the wrong reasons. I'm not about to do that. So, my goal is to help anybody wherever I can, and bring about financial empowerment, bring about literacy, all those things, wherever we can. So that's why I'm here. I thought I'd come into the topic, and that was a little heated that I heard, and I don't know, and I cannot speak to either side of it. So there I am.
Fine. Miss Queen, you came off. It looks like you had something else to say.
No, I was gonna tell him that you could definitely do a seminar telling Black people how to manage their finances, because we are aware that the education is gonna come from the white community.
Okay, thank you. And since Alonzo, you got this recorded, if I was ever challenged, I could say I've got her approval and endorsement to go ahead and do that, and I can cite that source.
Yeah, no, Miss Queen is definitely very opinionated. I respect it, right? And that's definitely things that need to happen is the civil discourse. Are we always gonna agree? Absolutely not. You know, I would recommend, doing those seminars. For example, continue to doing the financial advocacy podcast, right? I generally often repost your content or restream your content, and then I put I put my own twist on it, right?
Yep.
I think
I
that
love
helps.
that, by the way.
No problem. Yeah, I'll keep doing it. You keep educating, and I'll keep piggyback educating, right? I think that's definitely important. We have another guest up here, Prince Pierre. What's going on, brother?
Hey, Prince.
Yeah, I was on mute, man. I'm over here doing a day job. Yeah, I was listening to y'all, man, talk about that inflation and talk about what's really going on with this environment. Yeah, man. I looked it up. Yeah, that GDP growth, man, is at 2.8 right now. Supposed to be at for the future. I got another pickup somewhere else. Like 6. Yeah. Sorry about that, man. Somebody asked me a question.
What's
Yeah,
up?
that GDP growth, man, for it to be good, I know y'all know, 2.8 is trash. It got to be at 5. It got to be at 5%, man, for the inflation to stay out of the business of America. But if it's lower than that, man, that's when we get in trouble. So that's what's messing up the investments. That's what's messing up everything else that's going on right now. I mean, y'all tell me if I'm off base. I'm new to this game, man. So I just know some of this stuff just from old game from the house back in the day. But that's my take on that inflation, man. GDP growth ain't worth a dime. It was
Definitely
too.
understood.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that I look at again, and I mentioned this while Dave was streaming the other post. Donald Trump did some things that hurt me and my family, right? In his first term in office. One was the 35-day shutdown in government. I was also doing real estate at the time, and I have relatives who are government employees. They had to go to work on their own dime and not receive their paycheck. They had to go on unemployment and pay it back, but their unemployment was like a tenth of what they pulled in per week. Right? So that's very stressful. And then whilst I was doing real estate, I couldn't close on sales because we couldn't pull their tax transcripts because Trump has a personal vendetta against the IRS. He had been audited, 10 years in a row, right? And so my fear was, and still is, that he may throw a hissy fit, and the only income generating arm of the federal government, which is the IRS, is what he kind of has something against. That's one of the things that had me against the fence. His tax structure change actually, um, even though it lowers our tax bracket, the what is it? The general exception. Oh God, I can't even think of the standard deduction, right?
Mhm.
Disallowed people like myself and Dave who are self-employed to do a lot of write-offs. Now, I'm not making quite yet the income that Dave makes from the insurance field, but I'm getting there, right? Um, and I think, ironically enough, Dave, you can piggyback me on this. This is actually a great point of emphasis that we can actually educate on. So one of the things that Kamala had that actually, uh, uh, or excuse me, Madam Vice President Harris, because I do think that in politics that is another major issue. We don't respect women. We always call them by their first name as opposed to their last name. We don't call Bush George. We don't call Obama Barry. We don't call, well, we call Donald Donald, but we don't call Trump
Yeah.
Donald. We use these men's last names. So regardless of how you feel about them, we do need to respect them by giving them the respect that they're going for in their position, which is, whatever it is, last name. So one of the things that I appreciative of Madam VP Harris's tax plan, outside of the unrealized capital gains, because I'll speak about that momentarily, went just down to the math. Trump's tax plan is going to uh, cause the average American income earner a loss of $5,000 per year, whereas VP Madam VP Harris's tax plan would have meant an increase of $5,000 per year on income earners. Now, the supposed idea was she was going to get taxes from those highest income earners. The problem is those high income havers are generally not income earners. They're getting passive income. One of those things is something that Dave and I speak about very often. And here's where the black community will listen to the white guy about finances. They're more apt to listen to you, Dave, than they are to me because I look like them. So remember the Yahoo Finance article you sent me when we first met?
Yep.
Where Yahoo Finance was explaining a lot of white MDRT agents kind of have a necessity to pull black MDRT qualifying agents under their wing because our community and our families generally don't have the income. It's also we don't have the trust because we don't see a plethora of black businesses or thriving black businesses. If you look at a lot of black businesses, there's over 250,000 barbershops and hair salons, but there's not those ancillary products. I can't go to a black distributor for my hair oil or my barber, my clippers, or my peanut oil for my chicken wing spot. So, there's a lot of things that are gaps that are missed in our communities, which is why, for example, when I went to Tom Goldenberg's campaign, one of the things I did, he said, "Hey, listen, can I expect your vote and a donation?" And I asked, I said, "Well, what are you going to give to me?" A couple weeks later, I got a phone call from the owner of the steakhouse, which we were at, 140,000, monthly overhead, 5 million in annual revenue. Then another business where he's importing Peruvian coffee for another $5 million. And then he had another Peruvian restaurant. I asked him, "How did you find?" He was like, "Oh, I Googled and I Googled insurance near me." So I just did that myself, and I was like, 1, 2, 3. I don't come up on the first page. So you mean you skipped all these pages with these giant prestigious names to find some random guy? I'm sorry, I find that hard to believe. But that is the power, Black Americans, of being in these rooms, of doing things like being on the Financial Advocacy Podcast, being on Pod TV. And there was an African American man or Black man there. I don't particularly personally like to carry the term African American because there's nothing African about me. And Africa is 54 countries. So I take Black American. But you know, seasons to taste.
Yeah.
Anybody have anything to say?
Well, I'll just add in that I know enough about the Black community to know that you prefer the term Black. So I'm like, hey, I'll bring it out, no problem. You know, I don't think anybody has any negatives on that. As far as the Trump tax plans and such, the one thing I think that Wall Street likes, and I did mention this earlier today, is that they like predictability. They like consistency where possible. Because right now, with the Trump Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, while I was on a similar program about, I don't know, 6 weeks ago or so, we talked about it, and we think that's generally a wash. Yet, it's scheduled to sunset at the end of next year, and Trump has every reason and every reason politically to keep that going, and hopefully he will, just because we like consistency. I agree with you regarding the standard deduction stuff. One thing that's interesting that you may or may not know, or is that there's as part of the Trump Tax Cut and Jobs Act, there's something called Regulation 199A, and this was an exemption for the life insurance agents to be included as a business, so you could get the additional 20% deduction that would not otherwise be available because they excluded those that offered financial services. So I remember the headlines on this saying life insurance is no longer a financial service, thanks to AALU, which is the Advanced Association of Life Underwriters, which now became FinSECA. They made sure to lobby for that so that life insurance agents can have that additional deduction. So I can appreciate that, which is another reason to support our advocacy. No, not my podcast. That's not it. But the advocacy groups like NAFA and FinSECA to make sure that if there's opportunities for us to preserve current benefits of what our industry provides and to receive extra benefits from the government in current proposals, hey, let's do it. You know, I'll take every advantage we can get. What were you going to say, Alonzo? There.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think those things are definitely. I was very unfamiliar with that. You said it's Rule 199A.
199A, and if you could Google 199A life insurance, and there'll be a headline that basically says life insurance is not a financial service, kind of, which you get our detractors out there say, see, life insurance, they're product peddlers. No, that's not what I'm trying to say. But we're trying to characterize it for the tax code. And so, you know what happened? I was just thinking about this morning. Every freedom out there has the ability to be abused, and that means every possible thing that's good news, someone's going to twist it to mean it's something completely different.
This is true.
All types of things. So, for example, years ago, and this has nothing to do with financial anything, but for years ago, California passed a new law that some people misinterpreted to say that we allow minors to be prostitutes. And that is not the intention of the law. The intention of the law was that for those that are end up in sex trafficking and such, that they will not have a permanent record because they were forced into a type of sexual servitude. And so they want to make sure that those people can get a clean shot at life. So it's not that we allow it, it's that we want to make sure that those who are victims of certain crimes, that they're not going to be held accountable and have these things over their heads for the rest of their life. But everything can be so misconstrued depending on what your view of it is and which way that whatever media you're listening to wants to take it. And
California,
we have to make sure yeah, especially California. We got all kinds of things going on. And but I am really looking forward to that Newsom Vance debate. That will be who the candidates are. And quite frankly, I think Vance is going to mop the floor with him, and I'm going to enjoy seeing that.
With him. That's not going to work.
He's going to knock him out, and especially with the last results. I mean, we have just passed 70% of the vote here in California. We've passed that. We don't want this petty crime and everything. And I'm reading through and I'm listening to Newsom's response, and that he wants to just make sure he's not having to build more prisons. That there's prison overcrowding. Therefore, let's make it. Basically, what he's saying is that we don't want to pay for it, so make sure the citizens pay for it through the petty theft and all that stuff. You know, you get to live with crime while we don't want to build prisons. I mean, give me a break.
Right. Well, the main reason I want California to turn red, so the California people that left California can come back home, man. I want y'all to go home. Y'all know y'all want to be out there. Y'all don't want to be in no Texas. Y'all don't want to be in no Arizona. Y'all don't want to be in no Washington unless you're a football player trying to get a scholarship. You know, that's just it. Or play for Oregon or
Oh, I
Ducks or
like that.
something. Yeah. Y'all get it ready so people go back home, man, so they can go enjoy themselves over
So
there,
yeah,
man.
Well, we're bleeding a little
right,
bit more, which is good.
Yeah, it's crazy. I couldn't believe what I saw that night, but I digress. Well, go ahead,
But it's
Alonzo.
still so minimal though. Like for example, Donald Trump
Yeah.
did. Like, I'm here in Riverside County, so we're just outside of LA, and it's still Donald Trump carried Riverside County, but by 1%. Now, 1% is enough, but it's not
Mhm.
that huge of a majority so
yeah,
far.
it's
They're
not a
still counting
landslide
things
Not,
like
right now.
that.
not a lot, but that's used for a Republican in that state.
That's
Yeah,
right. Although,
let's go,
quite
Mr.
frankly,
Switch.
being outside of LA, every time we hear red and blue, I start thinking of Crips and Bloods. I'm just saying.
Right,
Uh,
right, right, right.
All right,
Especially
Mr.
out there,
Switch, what
right?
you got?
What'd you say?
I've
I
never
want Miss
lived
Hunter to
in a.
speak because she has a differing opinion. So I want to give her the enough time to express her opinion as well.
Oh, me? Talking about me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Oh, I'm just gonna say, this is my first time living in a Democratic state. I've been here about 2 years, and the taxes are high. It
Yes, they
is
are.
expensive, but coming from a Republican state, I definitely understand why the taxes are high. There are certain things that deal with your everyday living for average people that they don't have to worry about, that we used to have to worry about. So it's different. I
Give me an
don't
example of one.
particularly like public trans. We don't pay for that. That's funded. You just get on the bus and go. The education system, a lot of the stuff that the children partake in is not expensive as it is in a Republican state. If your child is doing an extracurricular activity, you coming out $200-300 just for them to get the uniform and get started. That's not including all of the other costs that go with it. They don't do that here. So it's a lot different. And when I first got here, I was like, it's expensive. But living here, I can understand why. And I'm okay with it because if people, when they need, people in need tend to take. And you get less of people taking your stuff, even though they still have petty crime and all that type of stuff here. But it's not like I'm finna kick your door in and take because I'm out here starving. You know what I'm saying? The level of petty crime, I don't feel it as much as I did when I lived in all these Republican states. Because Republicans don't give a damn. If you ain't got it, you ain't got it. You just SOL, you know? So I
I
don't
think
know.
that's more of a city-based kind of use. I mean, that's just
Put
my
the key.
opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, compared to me being in Atlanta versus me being in Macon, it's a big difference in the crime rate, compared to Augusta because I'm
No,
in
that's a
Georgia.
Republican state. I'm talking about the difference between living in a Republican state and a Democratic state. And now I'm not talking about cities.
But what I wanted to say is like
Well, I'm
the entire Texas, but you got people that don't have kids, you got people that don't got no children. So I don't need to be paying for your kids' extracurricular activities. I ain't got now. I ain't with that one. I ain't
You
with the
don't pay
welfare
that. You
game.
don't pay
Well,
for extracurricular activities. You
you
just
just said that the taxes are higher, right? I break it down to the smallest compound. Okay, public transportation is paid for. Okay, all right. I don't know how much public education. I mean public transportation is. I ain't been on it in 30 years, so I don't even remember what it paid for. I always kept me some kind of car, so I don't know what public transportation is paying right now. I'm in Texas anyway, so I used to ride the T. That was 35 cents back then. That's irrelevant. All right, so I don't even remember, you know. Then you said something about extracurricular activities that the kids ain't got to come out to $300 for football uniforms. We know baseball is very expensive. Okay, and the bats is $400 by themselves. I mean, that's why a lot of black kids is not in baseball because the equipment is high. So I understand that, but it's like me, it's like passing a bill and saying, was that tuition forgiveness or whatever, debt forgiveness for the school. Hey man, I don't need to be paying for your schooling. I don't need to be getting taxed the extra 15 or 7% for somebody else schooling. I'm not, no. I was smart enough to go hustle me up a lick and get this and get
And
it taken
see,
care of another way.
that's why I like living in a democratic state, because the understanding is if you don't educate children and if you don't reach out and help everybody, it puts everybody else at risk. I don't want a bunch of dumbass, uneducated children growing up to become adults, because when
But
they become
also,
adults, they become
mhm,
a problem for all the other adults because they some dumbass. Like I'm
oh yeah.
cool on it. Make sure everybody gets an education and make sure everybody has at
Well,
least the bare minimum
You
of
got some
resources.
democratic cities like Chicago, Baltimore. They got young kids. Even let's say this here. Let's just go on and put the ghost where the ghost can get it. 2 years ago, I did a live about LeBron James school. All that money going in that school, and they still got the same math problems and reading problems like Baltimore schools. That is unacceptable for the primary school. That is unacceptable. It makes no sense. Who is teaching these kids and what's going on with this thing? I'm for school choice. I believe that the money need to be going straight to the parents, and you pick what institution you want your kid to go to. Now here in Texas, we just announced it early last week by we like to call him Wheelchair Abbott. Greg Abbott was standing in front of some school. I forgot the name of it. I think it was Life Academy or whatever, where it's gonna help the kids that can't function in the public school system. They can come over there, man, and get set up for trade schools and community college kids. And man, main thing we need to be doing these schools, they need to be doggone me setting these kids up for these doggone trades. I just doggone came off of just scrolling on a doggone YouTube thing, and some woman telling me about all these jobs they got going on, what they paying. Cats are coming out, cats making 85, 100,000, $130,000, and you can be 18, 19 years old. It's work out here, man. We just got to put it out there. I'm all about industrial
Okay, but if you
revolutionaries,
don't
and I'm
want
all
to
about
pay,
salesmen and all that there. Because
if you don't
everybody ain't got
want
no time to be going to no college. And let me say this and I'm done. I'm gonna finish about saying this. I don't think only thing a kid needs to be going to college for is to me is STEM, okay? Being a lawyer or a doctor and business. All right. And business it could be, kids going to school for liberal arts. I would not lie. I would not lie. No, no. I'll slap my son and my son or daughter in the face. They come over there talking about I'm taking up liberal arts. Man, I'm slapping you.
God, you're such a Texan.
I'm not playing, man. What we doing? We going to go, man. Hey, man, go join. Hey, it's a lot of outs. You
how do
got the
you
military.
advocate?
You got the military. You can go to. If you don't know what to do, go join the military, man. All
How do
right.
you
If you
advocate for
Go
trade
ahead.
schools when you saying that you don't want to pay extra money in taxes?
What you
Because
mean?
they're going to
Trade,
need to.
the trade. The key to
They're
trades
going
is
to
the financial
need.
aid on the trade is real quick. Most of them financial
They're
aids on trades is cheap, 20 and 30
they're
grand. So if you get into some kind of debt, right,
they're
you'll pay
going to
that off in a
need
year.
to get those equipments in those schools, and that's going to cost the school money, and that is funded through taxpayer dollars. Just
Who's
like
gonna
you
cost
were
money?
complaining about extracurricular activities, what they do is they purchase the uniforms and things of that nature, and the school keeps the uniforms, so they're reused things that the children don't have to pay for. Just like
Well,
they
what I'm
would
talking about, I ain't
reuse
talking about lower
that
education. I ain't talking about
equipment.
the development. I'm talking about high school.
No, you said trade school, so they will need equipment to learn how to do these trades. That's going to cost money. If you don't want to pay money because you don't want to pay for nobody else's kids, then how the school supposed to get this equipment and
What you
be
mean how the school get the
paid
kids, man? Schools gonna get the money.
No, no,
and
let
pay
him land the plane. Let him land the plane.
pay pay the teachers that are going to teach the trade? If I don't want to pay that much more in taxes. Like I don't. Why we so got a problem with educating our children?
I
Like
don't have
that's
a problem with
insane.
educating our children. I don't believe my already. I'm in the state of Texas, so there's no state income tax in the state, and I was able to go. I was eligible back in the day. You know what I'm saying? To be able to go under the state, because the state of Texas does this a little different. They know how to hold their money. You understand? They know how to hold their money. They don't play around. Then we got the state lottery here too. So that actually is the state lottery is what funds a lot of the education things down here in the state of Texas, especially extracurricular and getting people into trade schools. But a lot of people can get into the trade schools through financial aid on your own. I think a financial aid for a trade institution is better than
Oh, the goblins got him. All right,
But you
so
know, I grew up and I went to
that.
all right. So here's the thing, right? Again, as a person myself who doesn't have children, we have to realize that we're almost in a socialist economy in the fact that we do fund schools that we don't get the benefit from, right? That's where things like property tax come into play. That's where things like, and again, in the Black community, we have these issues with these schools, so on and so forth. But there's a huge issue as to why these schools, and I want to bring a Project Iskai's comment up, which is the question is why are these programs being removed from public, middle, and elementary and high school? And the reason is because often we have a number of people who are dependent on certain programs. What's up, bro, genius? And we have them not doing things like participating in the census. This then skews the allocation of dollars to those programs. So then we also do things, and I mean, people in my school districts were guilty of this. We would live in a certain area, certain region. We didn't like the schooling that those schools were getting because very similar to what you were saying, Sunkist, or what you were saying to Prince Pierre. Well, the people in that area didn't want to pay for our schooling, and because of that, we went to a richer area that had higher property taxes. It was majority white. When I went to the school, ironically enough, on my graduation day, there was a group called Pi KA, which was a quote unquote white supremacist group that uh, trashed our graduation. But ironically enough, I know some of those guys personally, right? They were just being dicks as high school kids, to be honest. Because at the end of the day, we still all have to interact and do business with each other, right? So what happens is the money that gets allocated doesn't go to those schools properly because in our area we're not uh, properly accounting for ourselves. So we're saying, hey, we have 8 people in this household, but when the census comes by, we're only saying we have 4. Well, that cuts in half the dollars that are allocated to our specific areas. Number one. Number two, like I've been saying, if we as Black Americans want either party or any party to take our agenda seriously, we have to do like Dr. Claude Anderson has been saying for decades. And that means that you have to purchase politicians. This is how you got things like the Hispanic Prosperity Initiative. Goya went and sat down with Donald Trump. They didn't say he's a white supremacist, we're not going to talk to him. They said he is what he is, he's whatever we feel he is. But at the end of the day, he's the person in power. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go, we're going to sit down, and we're going to say, hey, listen, we want you to sign this bill and put this law in force for us. And we're going to take you hostage because we're a multi-billion-dollar company. And if you don't, that's multi-billions of dollars that has heavy influence with the community. And then we will consider giving you our vote. Now, in 2020, he did not get a huge Hispanic or Latino turnout. In 2024, he did. But he actually put pen to paper and wrote those laws. And that was because we held our dollars hostage, or they held their dollars hostage. The AAPI during Kamala Harris's uh, term They gave what $26.5 billion to the AAPI community. That's because again, their businesses put up a fight, right? And in Black America, we don't value the business class too heavily, right? A conversation like this, I've had people all the time. Lonzo, your content is informative, but it's boring. As boring as it is, it's not boring when those checks come in. And I say it's boring myself. I saw this stuff, so don't get me wrong. Right? But it is what it is.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, anybody.
The
This is
fact of the
popcorn
matter
style.
is,
Okay,
just like you said, you can't go to a black distributor to get something when it comes to black businesses. Black people are locked out of business a lot of the times. It's a reason why you say we have beauty shops, we have barber shops, we got food places. That well, you can get access to those things. We probably dominate as far as consumership, the hair care market, but we don't get to sell those things because
But
the
the
people that
problem
have
is,
the distribution of those things do
the
not let
problem,
black people in.
problem is
I
like
know
what I
this
was doing.
for a fact. Stop talking over me while I'm talking. I know people that have tried to get into these industries and the things that they go up against. That's not something that you can necessarily fix in the way that you're talking about. For a lot of these black communities, when it comes to the way that their schools are being ran or handled, yes, it's a political thing, but before you can get up and start talking to uh the high level politicians about it, you first gotta get black folks to get active in a school district. The places where you have a middle class, upper middle class population of black people, they don't have those problems in their schools. They know better. But for most of black America, they don't know that. What I know from living in these areas and being around these people is they don't participate in the education. A lot of people didn't even know that the superintendent of the school district is an electable position. And it's like if you have that much of a complaint about what's going on in your schools and you done been to the school board meetings and you don't see any change, threaten their seat. But they don't know this. That's why I asked, do you go back and reach? Because we don't know politics at all. So when you start talking about super PACs and all of this stuff, you're talking to a very small percentage of black people that don't understand what you're talking about.
I understand that, but again, so to answer your question about how many people, the reason I said many is because I can't count, right? How many people I've tried to have these conversations with who are black, who even are black business owners, right? And it falls on deaf ear. Oh, I don't want to hear about that. But then when the issue comes up, it's an issue. But I want to pause there. Dave, you had something to say?
I had some thoughts. First of all, Alonso, thank you for pointing out the honoring women by the proper titles and such. I haven't even been noticing that, so I'm going to pay more attention to that. Calling Madam Vice President Harris and uh, Miss Hillary Clinton, that kind of thing. I don't think of it as being sexist, but I've just realized, okay, I'm noticing the pattern. So thank you for bringing that up. Um, One thing about schools, and again, I certainly can't speak for the Black community. I'm not eligible that way. But when I think of the Los Angeles School District, I remember hearing a statistic that the LAUSD has a higher budget than the entire state of Colorado. And where does all that money go? And it goes to primarily, I believe, yeah, you got to fund the education, you got to keep the buildings and teachers paid, but you also got the pension plans. The Cal Stirs is one of the biggest pension plans out there. Not so much Cal PERS, which is the state pension plan. So money has to go there. And the other part is what is it that these the superintendents, what are they measuring for? And right now, I think they're barely trying to measure for reading, writing, math, science, and stuff like that. They're not measuring for vocational areas. They're not measuring for music. Hey, I was a musician. In fact, I'm going to go pick up my clarinet here in an hour here, because I finally got one here and it hasn't been playing right for me. But music has become very much secondary, even though it has so many other ways that it impacts the development and growth of somebody, because you can learn leadership, you learn listening skills, you learn how teamwork. There's so many things about music that plays in everything else, but it's not a measurable indicator of any kind. What are schools looking for? How are you doing on these test scores? You know, the Common Core stuff, you know, all that stuff. That's what they're measuring for. And if we're not measuring against that, who's dictating that? The state and or the United States Department of Education. And we've been hearing about lately, they want to abolish the Department of Education on a federal level. Who knows what's going to happen there? I'm certainly not an authority on this stuff, but the fact is what gets measured gets the attention, and that's what gets the dollars to try to fuel that. And all the other stuff, you know, you want to learn auto shop. I don't know if or wood shop. I don't think they're doing that much anymore. I did take auto shop when I went to Irvine High School, 30 years ago. And that was interesting. At least it taught me not to blow up a car. But I would like to see more of that. But at the same time, if it's not a measurable priority and there's limitations of what they're accounting for, it's not going to get the funding. It just won't.
Can I say something, bro? All right. As far as the education, I have traveled, I worked for a moving company when I was younger. And the thing of it is, going to different states, that's why I was talking about it's a city by city basis, because I went to, I think it was Indiana one time, and the transportation was free. It was a small college town in Lafayette, so no problem there. But then go to other states like Chicago, I paid for the transit, So like I said, it's a state by state thing. And also regarding the taxes, I mean, I understand where Prince is coming from about paying the taxes, but even though if you have kids or not, you're helping that community with those kids by paying the taxes. And if it's kind of too high in that area, I mean, the only suggestion is just the move, because the thing of it is, when you're paying the taxes, you're actually helping these kids in this area, like some kids were saying, not get to a point of poverty to where they want to break in your house, because the school is actually educating them, and they're trying to get them better chances, talking to them about going to get a job, at the age compared to putting on a ski mask and want to rob somebody. So that's a big thing by paying your taxes and helping. But even if you're not into the point of having kids, still, I mean, my friend, his neighbor goes to these meetings. He said, well, if I'm paying these taxes, I don't need to see these kids hanging around here at 9 o'clock in the morning when they should be in school. So he go to the school board meetings like, what are you doing with these kids out here? What activities can they do after school versus hanging out? So he wants to know, if I'm spending my money in this community, how is this going to influence not only just me to where I see when my money is being spent, but for the kids, like what's going on with them? And in some areas you do have trades still being taught. I mean, in Atlanta, you have things like workshop where, kids go for auto body and stuff like that, but it's not as pushed as much, to where kids, if you see them kind of failing in school is not their thing. They're kind of pushing those kids in that direction. But overall, they're trying to get every kid to go to college, and that's not always going to be the thing. Military might be a good choice for them. And second of all, you go to the rural areas, that's heavily enforced. One of my friends, his daughter wanted to go take up nursing. She have a passion for helping people. She's in the city. The school that she wanted to go to didn't have a program that helps her. So my friend literally worked in the field we did, versus moving, had to end up moving from his area to an area that suits his daughter's needs for her to go to college. So going into her last 2 years, they moved in an area that better suits, for her to take up nursing and take up CNA and, doing all these volunteering at nursing homes. See, is this a way of life or a fit of a career that she wants? Like I said, in the rural areas, I've talked to guys. I've, sat down with this young guy. He was going to be a master bricks masonry as far as dealing with bricks and, building houses. He took this trade up for 4 years in high school. And I was like, wow, they don't even have that. Only thing we have is shop class teaching us how to work on cars, or the girls having cosmetology classes. But other than that, something that's brick mason, taking on being a plumber or electrician, that's not really heavily pushed. I mean, even though my older kids went to a a digital engineering school to where they focus more on, drones, like I would say engineering, more about drones digitally with cameras, things of that nature. But for somebody teaching electrician, that wasn't taught. You have to go to the rural areas to find that out. That's why I say it's by city basis. I mean, I pay my taxes. I know what's going on in my community. That's why I constantly move around. My older kids, I wasn't in the same area because I wasn't getting the same, you education for my kids. So I had to move out. Now I'm in the process. My two younger kids are going to be in high school. I'm about to move again. I mean, sad to say that being me doing this, I don't know about others, but this is the reason I'm doing it for my kids to have a better future.
And one thing that can add to that, so I touched briefly on, the Harris tax plan as opposed to the Trump tax plan. And one of the things I wanted to mention in regards to the Harris tax plan was PPLI. And thank you, Seeking My Creator. I saw the donation. I appreciate it. He says Black people do need to do a lot of planning to grow economically. So, Dave, what I did actually. And anybody who's interested in financial services, very similar to Brother Prince Pierre reached out to me. He's actually on my team as well. I'm not one of these recruit people, nor is David. However, there's something very valuable that he hosted with the IARFC, which is the International Association of Registered Financial Consultants. I need to actually put in my paperwork.
Put my name in, brother.
A bunch of other stuff. But it's invaluable. And one of the things I did take a little snippet from when Dr. Sanjay Talani was speaking, because I think it's something that, especially for the Black community, we're very short-sighted on, which was thinking into the future. So Dr. Talani was actually telling a story of a young woman who had as a client who had an 8-year-old son. She was putting things together, and she asked him, well, what happens if my son divorces, right? And then he had another client who was actually thinking hundreds of years into the future. And in the Black community, we're not doing that. But one of the things that affects everybody is these tax plans, right? Black, white, pink, purple, whatever. When you have PPLI, which is something that myself and David and Prince Pierre and she are huge advocates of, and actually Queen Sunkiss as well. Just about everybody who comes to my channel becomes a fan of life insurance, because I ironically I drill it into them. They may or may not become my client, but at least just like you, Dave, I want to advocate that they're an educated consumer, even if they don't become my client particularly. But one of the things that with Harris's plan that fell short was she was going to quote unquote tax the rich like everybody always says. And the problem with taxing the rich is that you cannot tax the rich because the rich do not earn income, right? In the traditional way. A lot of it is passive income, investment income, and it's not worked for. So they're not earning their income off of their labor. One of the huge and easy things they could do was privatize by doing something called PPLI, private placement life insurance. It's likely really the only product that's zero tax at all, right? There was a term when we first met, David. They were kind of legally cheating the IRS, right? It's
Yes.
because you don't have to end up paying these taxes. Ironically enough, Rael had sent me an article because I was talking about the BBD strategy, buy, borrow, die.
Mhm.
But you know what I've found? A lot of these articles don't talk about when they talk about, borrowing from your assets like your stocks and your bonds and your 401k. And it's very crazy that nobody looks at the PPLI. But I guess it's because the rich don't want, your average American understanding this absolute power of zero, right? So they want you to, I talked to so many realtors who are like, borrow from your 401k. I'm like, no, do a collateral assignment, right? And I've actually pulled the paperwork for collateral assignment. I actually had 2 clients of mine go to 2 different to a few different banks. One of them he actually is going to do a collateral assignment for a purchase of a property in Panama. The other one is in New York City. He went to Chase Bank. Chase Bank was like, no, we don't do that here. And then he went to another credit union. No, we don't do that here. So also you have to remember there were these things called ninja loans, no income, no job applications, right? Where you just had to have a pulse and you would get qualified for a mortgage. So now what has happened is they are very afraid of doing collateralized mortgages unless it's collateralized off of a property, because people like myself and David have been educating so many people on the benefit of what life insurance can do. Now, don't get this misconstrued. The number one purpose of life insurance is a death benefit. That is, and I don't care what anybody says, right? Not me, not Dave, not Wall Street Trapper, not Joe Piscopo. The number one purpose of life insurance is death benefit, right? It's passing that money down to the next generation. However, there are so many other benefits to it that simple life insurance policies and, a shameless plug, right, could actually help in our political stances, right? Being able to borrow against your policy as opposed to borrowing from it can now help, especially if we're looking at things like in the Black community, not being invited to these invite-only things. So, for example, that political campaign was an invite only. I got invited to it, but I wasn't, and that's only because I registered my name as a business in my apartment. But I know so many other Black men who had businesses who weren't invited, and I'm registered as an independent, right? So just like as a independent agent, right, as opposed to one who works for a company, I make the people who want the power kowtow to me. Tell me why I should bring my client to your company to place their insurance, their retirement, or their investment business with you, right? Tell me why I should bring my community to you to vote for you, right? Again, this is popcorn style panel, folks. So anybody wants to say anything, feel welcome to pop in.
Okay, I'm in. So here's the thing: is that there's a lot of things that are just they're not talked about because they don't apply to the vast majority of people. Private placement life insurance is a wonderful tool, but you've got to have at least $10 million of net worth that could be put into that policy to make it worthwhile. It's not available to the vast majority of people. And because it's not available, it's not feasible. Almost like, why should we even talk about it? And by the way, there's a level above a PPLI. It's called a Hampton Freeze, which has even more freedom and more flexibility. I hope one day I could sell a few of those. Who knows what will happen in the future? There's something else out there called an ESOP. Yeah, so the ESOP is a way that a company can transfer their company ownership interest or the company's stock into an ERISA qualified plan. And then as a plan, they can borrow against it to buy out the business owner and transfer the ownership of the company to the employees. But that's only available if, and with the specialists I have, they want to see a business that has at least a $10 million valuation. So it's not available to everybody.
That, actually, Dave.
Okay.
Because I have a relative who had an ESOP in New York City. And when I was doing my research on the ESOP for him, he'd been with this company about 12, 15 years. But it looks generally ESOPs are established when they kind of have I guess it's their exit strategy, and they're likely looking to exit the business or sell the business. Maybe not in the immediate future, but sometime in the near future, 20, 30 years from now.
Yeah, so ESOP, the vast majority of them are considered leveraged ESOPs, which is a business owner says, I'm done with this business. It's time to retire. I want to get out. And it takes 6 months to 2 years to get it all done and funded, and the business owner can leave. That's the leveraged ESOP. The contributory ESOP is one that can be done over time, 20, 30 years if you want, at least a 5-year time horizon, if not longer. And that's what my friends Kelly Smith and Rich Coffin do. They're here in Southern California, but they do business across the country. But they do primarily the contributory ESOP, which has far less in fees. The fees for leveraged ESOP, my understanding, I've never done these, but I've listened to these guys talk about it so much. But a leveraged ESOP can have fees because of the valuations of like $250,000. Whereas a contributory ESOP to set that up could be about $50,000. So there's a fee difference, and because of that, it makes it far more relevant for lower value companies. I don't know if a leveraged ESOP, if you have to have a $25 million company or what, I don't know. But the idea is that you're able to fund the vehicles where you can actually help employees to be bought out, right? Because they got to be vested over time over their service units, but at the same time, the plan can buy out the business owner, because the plan can raise money itself, and there's no other ERISA plan that will do that. You can't set up a 401k and then have the business itself borrow against the 401k assets. It cannot be done. An ESOP can do that. So there's a lot of things that are out there, and for me, I look at this. I'm here in Southern California. We've got this great fast food restaurant called In-N-Out Burger, and they've got the not so secret menu. And to me, it's like I've got a standard menu I want everybody to know about, but I've got the secret menu. I'll bring it out when something might apply. But until then, I'm not really going to talk about all that much, only because it doesn't apply to the vast majority of people. I need people to understand the problems that they've got, realize that they want to solve those problems. Then we'll figure out based on their situation what's going to be the best way to go. The good news is, at least I'm exposed to so many people who have so many different ideas that I've got a lot to bring to the table that could be otherwise not talked about. And so I consider myself very blessed in that way. And my goal is to share that. But at the same time, it doesn't apply to that many people. So I'm not about to run an ad saying, check out private placement life insurance before it's too late, before Senator Ron Wyden wants to eliminate it. It's just not sold or promoted that way. So my goal is to meet with people, see where they're at, and then using my creative resources, let's see what the best solution is going to be for them.
Absolutely. But I do think most Americans at just about every income level can actually benefit from things like a rich man's Roth. Again, I'm an IUL guy. We have that agreement to disagree, but you know, and again, I'm not a product pusher, right? Because I have so many people who come to me. I want the IUL, and I'm like, why? Can you afford it? Like I let people know IULs are going to be expensive, right? And you really shouldn't put a number on it, but I do, just because I want people to understand. Listen, if you really want this thing to work, and you're 45 years old, don't think you're going to put $300 a month in, and it's going to work the way you think it is. You're going to put
Right.
thousands, if not tens of thousands, in there. Is that kind of personal? Because yes, it helps my commission, yes, but it's also true, because the reality is looking out for Regulation 187, which is New York, and the rest of the country knows that there's Regulation BI. But Regulation 187, just realistically looking at the suitability, we have to, as insurance agents in the state of New York, act as a full-fledged, fully licensed securities licensed financial advisor, right? So we have to do the full intake. We give you the full disclosure. I let people know my commission, all that stuff up front, right? And to be honest, I think in our industry, that would eliminate a lot of the how can I say this in a nice eliminate a lot of the hogwash agents who are out there, right? But even back to the political thing, a lot of these products can help general Americans. Like, I just recently learned of like the 412. Now I want to go sell one, right? And even questions like, again, I'm in a dynamic position because one of the things he was like, well, a lot of agents are going to run into a CPA who's going to be like, well, what about the vesting schedule? Well, I've already got that taken care of. I understand vesting schedule, this, that, and the third, right? So you asked me that question, I've got the answer. But, just opening up things to like the ESOP and all these other things, you as the general public need to be asking not just your financial advisors, but your employees, or excuse me, your employer, a lot of these questions, because a lot of your employers are also behind the scenes donating to these campaigns. You'd be surprised how many, and again, I'm here in Connecticut, New Haven, Connecticut at that, a stone's throw from Yale University. So, and my state is, believe it or not, this is one of the bluest states you can ever visit, right? With all the wealth that's here, it's super blue. And we're like one of the richest states in the country, right? But everybody here is super duper liberal and super duper blue. Joe Lieberman outside of them. but but other than that, it's super duper blue. I've spoken to some guys with LPL, and I kind of spoke to them about my political views, and I felt that I may have put my foot in my mouth because they were like, "Oh, we don't like Donald Trump," and I'm like, "But you guys have 100 million AUM. What do you mean?" Uh, and it is what it is.
Only 100 million. That sounds pretty small to me.
Well,
But
yeah,
the thing is that most of the wealthy people start to use the political system to keep down the potential competition. So
yeah.
that's what happens. They weaponize it through the political parties, and so they say I'm blue because I can afford to increase the minimum wage, and my competitors can't. So that's my
Mm,
way of getting other people out of business. So that if you can't keep up with it, I know you want it lower, but I'm going to make sure that we can stay in business because we're bigger than you. That's usually
yeah.
what ends up happening.
Well, that's
Yeah.
funny because I have an uncle. He has 500 million AUM, and I was calling him. I was like, "Listen, before I sign this paperwork with LPL, can I talk to you about your book?" He's 71. He's getting out the game. He already started selling his book. Go ahead, Prince.
Yeah, I mean, people don't understand the minimum wage. Message going up on the minimum wage actually hurts the market anyway. Because a lot of these minimum wage jobs, they don't have any skill to them. I had to throw myself in this crap real fast. Okay. The minimum wage, when it's $7, it's supposed to make you mad, to make you go,
Thank
supposed
you, Miss
to
Queen.
give you an intestinal fortitude to go get you a skill. Well, what about people? I don't care about people that don't pay, man. You can do something. There's some skills going out here that's gonna pay you $30 to $40 an hour. This skill, or you need to get in some sales, you need to get in something, you need to create a product or a service that'll get you above minimum wage. Much your small business do something. Minimum wage is there for a reason. That's why when I was a kid, man, I remember when I first graduated, I was making $4.25 an hour. Okay. Then I went over another job 2 years. I was 93 to about 96. I was making that mess. In 1997, I was making $25 an hour in 1997. And that's because I got game. I got intestinal fortitude. I got conversation. See, a minimum wage ain't about no conversation. It ain't about putting nothing down. So people need to come on, man. I was told like that. The minimum wage is supposed to insult you. It's there to insult you. It's there to make you go do something with yourself. I don't know what's wrong with people today. That's why homeboy financial advocate saying that ain't nothing but a hustle. Somebody we got to make the minimum wage up so they can try to knock out and eliminate labor. And some of these jobs that are got minimum wage jobs are meant for kids that's 14 and legal age to work. So they'll learn. They don't want to work for that trash. How you think kids end up not ever working for that no more? They get out there, work at McDonald's, work at these fast food places. That was meant for kids. I've always been meant for kids. And I understand everybody coming over here, running over here, and we got old folks working over here at these things. And if they older people, that's different. They retire and they're trying to balance their money. That's a different thing. But man, you between the ages of 22, you understand me, up to 60, man, you need to be making some real money. You got bills to pay and people to take care of and things to do. Let's intelligence, which is minimum wage. I don't never agree with it.
Yeah, Prince is a truck driver, so he's probably going in and out. You get now?
Yeah, the minimum wage
I'm
is such
I
a
don't
tax
one of them
on the
guys.
business overhead. I mean, the minimum wage, it's a big tax on businesses that don't have the transaction volume. It becomes a higher issue. It's a higher risk for business owners, which means that
Yeah.
it's all going to shift over to other businesses that can handle it. I mean, the In-N-Out Burger, you can barely get there without there being a line of at
Yeah.
least 20 cars, right? They've got the transaction volume. They raise the prices just a little bit. It's annoying, but they can handle it. There's other places that can't. And so it's an attack against business. And at the same time, when the minimum wage goes up, everything else goes up. It's a ripple effect. And so what you find out is that you're saying minimum wage. Okay, you're in California, you're making $20 an hour. Great. How much is your Happy Meal now? I mean, come on. Everything else is about you are
$20,
not.
ain't it? $20.
well, not quite 200, but
Yeah,
we're
don't
getting
catch
there,
it.
man. I can't leave. Okay, granted, I'm a big guy and I got a big appetite. I can't leave McDonald's without spending $16 just on me. So it I maybe I need to scale it back, but still, it's just it's annoying because if you're only earning $20 an hour, you're still paying the same amount. Your lifestyle did not change, but yet the political left is going to say, "Hey, we increased it. We got you your higher minimum wage." Come on, people. It's just
Yeah, it's a
the
game.
economics. It's a game, and unfortunately, it's the financial and economic IQ. And granted, I did not go to college, guys. The college I've got after those letters after my name are certifications. I did not go to college, but some of the stuff ends up being common sense. I think it's common sense. You go to like Hillsdale College, they've got a course on the minimum wage and economics and things like that. Basically saying the higher the minimum wage, the less people can be hired, which means that more people have to settle for these minimum wage types jobs. There are far more people that are much in my age and older working at McDonald's than there should be in a normal, or at least I should say, the traditional environment that we grew up in. When we grew up, you went to McDonald's was your first job. You're not supposed to stay there for a career necessarily. Some people do. They rise up the ladder, and I'll still see. Sometimes every once in a while you'll see like an older gentleman that has Down syndrome, right? And he worked for the company for 30 years, and he finally retired. Great for him. It's just it's not the career it should be. And it ends up being that way because of other economic conditions. It's annoying. I don't know what the solution is to fix it. Right now, the only thing I think of is I've never seen a state lower minimum wage. So darn it, California, freeze the minimum wage for like at least the next 5 years, quit increasing it, let everything else kind of build up a little bit. I mean, minimum wage is a tax on the consumer. Businesses really don't pay it other than as long as they can stay in business.
Isn't the
It's all
national
being
minimum wage still like 750? Whereas, so we have because of I guess the Bible Belt or Middle American states, their income and cost of living is so much lower than us on the coast, right? Coastal, we, you know, and I think this is something to be said too, because I'm a coastal, David, you're a coastal, and we have completely different. We see things so different from the rest of the country, right? The rest of the country, their access to things and stuff is very different. Prime example: when I lived in North Carolina, and when I lived in Georgia, and shoot, when I lived in Texas, I lived in a wealthy, quote unquote, white part of Texas, which was called Plano, right? And I dealt with what I dealt with there, but there were protections because, yeah, I was one of the few blacks there, but guess what? That meant I was one with, well, I wasn't there. I was 3 years old. So my family were, were folks with money, right? But then, it's a whole different story when I lived in Vegas. But even when I lived in Brooklyn, New York, right? I lived on a quote unquote privileged block. When I met my wife and oh yeah, I'm going to Bed-Stuy. I thought I was going to see, a rap video from Jay-Z because she lived in Bed-Stuy. And then when I got there, I was like, wait, this looks like the Cosby Show because the people there were of a certain economic level, right? Her mother or my mother-in-law was an employee at Morgan Stanley, right? My father-in-law was a diamond cutter in the diamond district, right? My stepfather-in-law was he worked at Columbia University, right? The block we lived on, we had Eric Adams lived on. So this isn't your regular. And I don't think, yes, there were a lot of black professionals, white professionals, Latin professionals, and Asian professionals on this block. But we also have to realize, and I think this is one of the major issues with Black America, we have segregated ourselves because we don't have the socioeconomic status in full. What I've noticed is that race becomes less and less important the higher up you're economically you climb.
I like to
And
think so.
go ahead, Dave.
Okay. No, because I grew up in Santa Ana, which is kind of the ghetto of Orange County, and then moved to Irvine, which is kind of a Fortune 500 city. And the better things are for people, the less that racism, segregation, those things tend to happen. Now, I'm now here in Riverside County. That's again outside of LA, and I could tell it's still. I'm not going to say segregated. Why does that sound like it's imposed? But there are clumps. But I don't know what else to put it. But Riverside County is far more blue collar
Subgroups.
than it is white collar. Yeah, subgroup. There we go. Thank you. Give me the nice terms. But I remember, now you may or may not know this, I was a missionary for my church. I was an LDS missionary, and I served in the Tennessee area. And I remember one day in particular. Now, I don't know the history of all this stuff. I just remember I was in this one area outside of Knoxville, and the entire block was all black. Everybody. And I didn't realize until after we were done knocking on doors. I'm like, wow, everybody there was black. And everybody was awesome, by the way. I loved talking to them. The black people. There's a wonderful spiritual soul there. I'm sorry, this cracker don't have that. I'm sorry. I just know, but I could recognize it and appreciate it. We didn't get a chance to have too many great conversations, but we had some nice ones. And so, but afterwards, we're just like, wow, that entire block was black. I wonder why that is. And it's like people fall into that, and people congregate to be where they like to be. Call it tribalism. That might be a proper term. I don't know. But people go where they're most comfortable at. And when someone starts to stretch beyond those peer-induced barriers, peer-induced boundaries, whatever it could be, it's harder. I mean, I think of, this old adage of, if a crab is trying to climb out the bucket, the other crabs will bring them back down. And so you've got to change your environment sometimes in order to move on and progress based on what you want to do. So environment does play a factor in that. And sometimes we settle to where we are most comfortable, wherever that is, however indifferent that may be. But it is part of the human condition, I think.
Yeah. Environment is one, education is another. I'm with Alonzo, listening to these boring conversations. I frequently watch your podcast. Alonzo, tells me about it. I'm always in it. That's my cliche saying, we here, is because I started my channel with a lot of people starting channels, and no one was never in there. If they were there, they weren't saying anything. So I would always say we here, just to, kind of get people more involved. Like, oh, there's a lot of people in the chat. So that's how I started my channel, by saying we here. But going into
Appreciate that.
a lot of times the education is a big part. And Alonzo, me and him speak on this. I've had life insurance as far as I can remember. From my mother, grandma having life insurance, even when I turned 18 and got my own policy. My great grandma, she always told me, you don't want to be a burden to nobody. So it was always the notion of getting insurance to, if anything shall happen and you pass, you don't want to have these issues of being buried properly, or, to a degree, a position of mourning for people to come, pay their respects. So that was a big thing. And then, more or less start looking at the financial standings on it, to where I started noticing as I got older, where a lot of people were taking their life insurance and leaving money for the family. So I was like, it's not just for me, just have some money to be buried, which, the burden of getting the money up, because honestly speaking, I mean, even cremations have got to about anywhere from $500 to $1,000 for cremations now. That's let alone not even having a whole funeral with a casket. You're looking at almost on the low end $6,000 if you find somebody pretty decent, family related or something. But other than that, you're at the high end of $8,000 to $10,000 coming out the gate for a funeral now. And like I said, that's depends on the area. Out in California, I would imagine on the low end it's $15,000 for a funeral. Especially having it at a church or whatever. Some people that don't have a church home, they got to pay wherever they're going to have the service in. So that's a big thing, which I learned over time. And with me being married and knowing the fact that my dad had a trust, everything set up to where things were in play when he passed, to where I said I want that for my kids. And that was my biggest adversary for pushing life insurance and dealing with Alonzo and knowing these things because my dad was in the military, and I was like, well, I didn't go to the military, but what can I do to leave money for my kids, just like my dad did, and have me and my brother set up to the point if I have my kids in the future, I can do the same thing. So that was one of the big components of me always pushing life insurance. I told all my friends, you don't have life insurance, man, you're just condemning your family. One of my friends, his biggest thing was his mom kind of pushed him into it, even though me kept poking him with a stick all the time. But he ended up getting life insurance because he went and did an overseas contract. So that was one of the stipulations that you could die over here, so you might want to get some insurance. And that was before him having a family and everything. Now he appreciates that. And same thing with me, Alonzo knows, and Alonzo even had for life insurance for my kids. That was one of the things we discussed, and getting to the point where their insurance can carry to their kids versus just having a term or something like that, thinking longevity. So that's why I say the education does play a big part in it, to where a lot of people, you can say you've been locked out of areas of finance and, not knowing. But they're taking this stuff out of the schools for a reason. You bounce your check because you don't know how to balance your money. Financially wise, when it comes down to it, Alonzo always saying, getting a $5,000, $10,000 life insurance, yeah, it's good. It's enough to bury you. But if you have a family, you're the breadwinner of the family, and you pass that $100,000 or even that $50,000 a year salary, what is the wife gonna do? So I look at that, and that's why I'm always interested. Like I tell Alonzo, I like listening to the boring stuff too because I want to educate myself on it.
Agreed. Thank you so much for sharing. Because the biggest thing I can think of with life insurance is that they think of it as a product. They think of it as a checklist item. Oh, I got that. I got that from my work. I'm all set. And just because you got one, maybe possibly two policies, doesn't mean that you've secured the future for your family. I don't know what I would rename life insurance to, but the term life insurance talks about what it is, not necessarily what it does. And if we can reframe it far more about what life insurance can do, and that you could do it based on how much guarantees you want in that plan. If you want to guarantee that the next generation is going to be far better off because of you than not, you need legacy life. I'm making up a term. You need legacy life insurance, or you need lifestyle protection insurance. I don't know. There's got to be some way to reposition it so people see the potential of it rather than just, hey, I got that checked off my list. I'm okay.
Yeah, that's like me. Then Alonzo was talking about, like, I have I would say the car, but I would call it the sling blade or the one of those tri cars that they have now. Because I have the IUL, the whole life, and the term. So I have all three, But the thing of it is, you can always get more. But the point of it, just try these plans, and hey, these are things that everybody's talking about. I want to get these plans, and I want to see who's going to outlive what as far as the plans for me. Paying into it, paying a little more later in time, and being educated on my plans. Like Alonzo told me about doing reviews and stuff. So go over my policy, because my policy is different from my wife. My wife don't have living benefits. I have living benefits on my policy. So now my wife wants to look at that, seeing her policy, because she update that, put some on that. And I told her, I said, well, we have to sit down and we can discuss it. And that's the biggest thing. But like I say, a lot of people, and Alonzo talked about this one time with a family member of his, you don't really think about life insurance until you laying on that table and you actually need it. You're in the hospital, yep. Something happened. That's when you be like, oh man, did I get this? I should have got this policy before this happened. You don't want to have a stroke and say, oh man, I should be getting this policy. Hopefully, if I make it out of here, think about it now.
Yeah, when you're on the table, right before they sedate you for your procedure of whatever it is, you're not going to be thinking, man, I finally got that 15% in the stock market. That's not what's going to go through your mind. You're going to think, did I get enough? Did I secure my family's future? But once you're on the table, unless it's elective surgery or something, and that once you're on the table, it's too late. I mean, we talk about, the industry talks about you need life insurance before you need it. Well, needing it is when you think that your mortality is in question. Until then, it could be a want question. Can you get it? And we want to help people find out, can you get it? Can you maximize your opportunity to get it? Your health buys it. Your checkbook pays for it. So everybody's got to be able to find out. And that's the biggest thing, is just to find out. You need a skilled insurance agent like Alonzo that can help you to do that kind of thing. And whoever else is on that happens to be an agent. Life insurance, I think anytime that there's debt signals a need for life insurance. I wonder if the insurance companies can bail out the United States with as much debt as we've got. Who knows?
I'm pretty sure, one thing that she didn't let me do that background noise. One thing that I found from the most recent CAFP, Conference of African American Financial Professionals, for those who don't know, which is hosted by the American College of Financial Services. So the Black community does a lot of talk about this thing called reparation. And Dave, I don't know if I shared with you, there's an article written by he's now a doctor by the name of Michael Ralph. He was at New York University when he wrote this article, but it has to do with American life insurance and slavery. And there's a quote from Josiah C. Knott where he writes on, what is it? I think it's life insurance in the South. And then in May of 1847, and then in November of 1847, he writes a quote basically saying the Negro is looked at basically, they can toil their work, but if they should become unwell, they can be looked at like a superannuated horse, and you cannot expect fair play from the slave owner. And that was Life of the Southern Plantation. I'm quoting it wrong. I'll send you the link to the article.
Sure.
But one of the things that I think Black Americans don't understand simply about life insurance, and me and Dave, we actually had this conversation probably back in 2019, where something simple as life insurance. Listen, I don't care if it's term life, whole life, universal life, index universal life, anything but variable. But it can actually pass down generational wealth. But what we have to do is stop thinking of buzzwords and actually understand what generational wealth is. How long is a generation? Google says it's between 20 and 30 years, right? What's the average annual income of an American? As of Q4 2023, it's $60,000. 60,000 times 20 is $1.2 million. So at least, that guy who does work at McDonald's making minimum wage 60,000. I know 60,000 isn't minimum wage, but making average wage $60,000 a year, you need at least $1.2 million to leave a generation of just making it. Because $60,000 is by no means wealth, any state that you live in America, right? But it is at least some form of comfort, right? But then we also have to look at, further education. So, I reference that because CAFP actually mentioned that this big thing that Black America talks about, which is reparation. Well, if you don't know, life insurance companies are actually on the precipice of being some of the first companies that are willing and able to pay reparations to Black Americans whom had policies, and they were denied either payment or full payment. You can actually also do things like look at the NYFA lost policy locator to find, hey, Grandpa Jones had a policy. Here's the info. Hey, he actually left us $1 million, right? Because I actually spoke to, shout out to the credit solutionist. She was mentioning how she has life insurance, but she didn't mention to the people who are the beneficiary that they are the beneficiary. She just left that in her will. And while it's good to leave it in your will, it's still very dangerous. Your beneficiaries need to know that they're beneficiaries, because otherwise they won't even go looking for the will or be contacted by, the executor of the estate. But there's also things like there were Black rates. Ironically enough, a company that I do some business with, Prudential, was one of the companies that when slavery was abolished, implemented Black rates. So because of the rates of mortality, the rates for Black people were higher. This was recently changed. I believe it was reversed by the Supreme Court October 2023. So this is very new that rates have now become not just unisex, but also they've crossed racial lines. So they're not, obviously, there's still actuarial things that are saying, hey, Black males between 38 and 47 are dying from heart attacks because we are, because we're putting ourselves in stressful positions, right? And, we have to do things like, hey, you know what? Go get the information from that white guy, right? Because he's probably not going. Well, the reality is this, David. And this is a major issue that I have with a lot of people on social media who tend to be Black. They run on affinity politics, or affinity fraudsters, similar to Kamala Harris, right? Hey, listen, I'm Black like you, so you should. One of the people that I speak out against is a gentleman by the name of Wall Street Trapper. And the reason I dislike him is he's like, hey, listen, you can get into the stock market without a license. Just buy my course for $697. And I'm always like, well, why do that? You can go to Kaplan and buy the SIE and Series 7 manual for $497. And what I've been told by a lot of people in the Black community is, well, Alonzo, you sound like a hater. We don't want to listen to you because you're licensed, so you're part of the establishment. Okay, where did I say you had to get the license when you get these manuals? All you're doing is getting the manual. You don't have to actually take the license exam. But if you read the material that the people who have the license have read, now you know what the people who have the license do versus what Wall Street Trapper is telling you, or Keenan Grace, or Stock Up with Larry Jones, or and there's white guys out there too who do it. I just, I don't follow them. There's just like a gentleman, JT the Pocket Watcher. He often gets from the Black community. Why are you stomping on, the Black guys who are doing it? There's white guys who are doing it too. Yes, they are, but the white guys who are doing it aren't preying on the Black community. The Black guys who are doing it are playing on the black community. So we're pointing out their fraud so that people like me and people like JT and people like Prince, we don't have to go through this extreme grinding process and this extreme apprehension from the Black community when we're actually trying to be honest with you. So that's why often, Dave, you'll see when I post, I'm like, hey, here's what the white guys are doing. Because unfortunately, in my community, that's where we trust it. It's just like I use the whole brand terminology, right? And and this is something that a lot of people use, just regular Americans. They'll put up a meme. Hey, this guy is wearing brand names, and this guy is wearing stuff from Walmart. No, no, no. Wealthy people definitely wear brands. One of them happens to be Hermes. You just can't. It's not branded across them. And in our community, I guess you could call this leftover from slavery. We need to have a brand across our chest, right? If I'm
Yeah,
not wearing blue
the word
cheese,
brand is taking a new connotation based on that. But I hear you.
go ahead, brother. It
'Cause
sounds like you want to say
back
some
then I'm
stuff.
thinking branding. You're talking about I forgot the thing they do to cows. You take
Yes.
the iron thing, put it and make it red hot, and you branding it. I'm like, geez, no, I don't want to feel that pain. I could try to imagine it. I don't want to. But I can understand the desire to create an enemy. It's in fact, I've even got a white paper on this, inspiring others, the language of leadership, and it has some various examples. It's certainly not limited to the Black community at all. Steve Jobs created a quasi war with IBM, and basically saying that they're not doing what we're doing. We're doing this, and this, and they're not. They're the enemy. They're preventing it, or whatever it is that they do, right? And it's not an actual war, but it's a way to inspire and galvanize the troops, right? It's the same thing that I'm doing. I mean, look, you can't tell with my logo here, but I got Wall Street, the banks, and the IRS, right? And in a way, you can even put the insurance companies in it. My goal is to advocate for the consumer against the agendas of these guys. Now, the agenda of these guys, they don't know they're causing harm, but my goal is to bring it to light and let the consumer make a decision. And so with these guys, maybe they're hucksters, maybe they're not. I could tell you this. Their course should not be based on regulations if there's anything worthwhile to buy that course, because first of all, you could buy an older course and probably pay $10 for it off of eBay. I don't think regulations have changed all that much other than marketing and disclosures and stuff like that. But how the stock market works, that hasn't changed. But so if you get a Series 7 top-off book, it's going to be the same as what I did 20 years ago, other than a couple of different regulations might have changed here and there. But if you're trying to figure out how to invest and time the market, heaven help you. But if you're trying to do that, hopefully that's what he's trying to do. Because believe me, the licensing, and I tell people this all the time, licensing doesn't mean you know anything. I'm sorry, guys. You don't necessarily. What you figure out is, are you smart enough to be held accountable, and are you going to act for the interest of the client? Because you need a license because you can do damage. Because you can do damage, you need to be licensed and regulated. That's the reason why. And so I tell people, just because you got a license doesn't mean you know anything. But you can be held accountable, and you can get paid because you're taking on that professional risk as well for what you're doing for people. And hopefully it is for people, not to people. So yeah, that's my opinion on I passed my insurance exam. What was it? A week of live study. I did another week, maybe 2 weeks of practicing the practice exams because I didn't want to mess it up. And then finally I took the exam and I passed. Who knows what score? And now knowing what I could do with just an insurance license, it's amazing what can be done, but it's also amazing of the damage that can be done if it's used inappropriately to a client, to the client's disadvantage, without the proper explanations it's gigantic. And I certainly don't want to ever be accused, let alone I never want to be thought of as someone that created a cause for someone to be worse off. Now, other people's situations can change and they might have to cancel. That's on them, not necessarily because I misrepresented something. That there's a difference there. But when you have the power to create damage, you've got there's a need for regulation. Now, as far as a course, you're creating a written content. I'm creating a designation course, and believe me, I've got all kinds of disclaimers on there saying I'm not responsible. Because I'm not. Everybody else has their own individual license. You're responsible to make sure everything is correct. We're going to do everything to the best of our ability. We think it's a good opinion, but if you need to check with somebody, that's on you. Because we're in a litigious society, and the last thing I need is a lawsuit. So anyway, I just went on a rant there. But yeah, if that guy's trying to teach a course, maybe he's teaching on how to, that's fine, as long as it's good, but haven't helped people who are trying to do it. But if he's talking about rules and regulations, pick up a Series 7 study guide off of eBay, pay $10 and call it good. So.
I agree. Again, like you said, it's marketing 101, right? Create the enemy.
Yep.
So, I've even reached out to him behind the scenes and I've been like, hey, listen, I have a love-hate relationship. Because, Black folks have felt like we've been blocked from this stuff all too long. And maybe in some senses we have, right? Certain data shows from Q4 1990 to Q4 2020. Ownership of equities and mutual funds by race, right? White Americans have had, I think it's like 96%. Black Americans have been 1% from Q4 1995 till Q4 2020. So what happens, however, is a lot of the affinity fraud where we think we're investing and we're not, right? Just because, unfortunately, we don't even understand, the difference between a retail investor versus an accredited investor versus an institutional investor, so on and so forth. It's just, I'm investing. And then 90% of Americans who invest don't even realize that they're actually gambling as opposed to actually investing, right? I tell people, listen, a lot of these, stock options, so on. Jamin Dimon wants stock options because his job is to make sure that JP Morgan Chase Bank is profitable. So when he retires and sells those shares either back onto the open market or back to JP Morgan, he becomes, better off. So his job is to make sure it's profitable, so that makes sense. But the average American doesn't even go into the stock market with the same purpose that the wealthy do. Wealthy don't go into the stock market for accretion of funds. They go in for preservation of capital so that their $100,000 can weather the storm of inflation. And at the end of 10 years or the end of 20 years, which is the average time horizon, that $100,000 still have 100 or maybe $110,000 worth of spending power. It's not so that they can get generationally rich, because you're not going to get generationally rich off of the stock market, right? Yes, is there the incidental Google, the incidental, Facebook? Yes, but realistically, your average American can't even invest enough to make it worth their while, right? And they don't have the risk tolerance or the behavioral finance. That's why people like Dave and myself are very staunch about fixed products, right? Because I think I can't recall his name, but the gentleman said something that was very beautiful. I like to guaranteed outcomes, but I also like to guaranteed incomes. And that stuck with me, right? Because when you can guarantee an income, you're so much more comfortable. But I've been going for 2 hours and 45 minutes, and I have errands to run, and I want to go have a cigarette. I know I need to quit, guys. Beat me up.
Come on, man. Really? Cigarette?
I know.
Stay on you.
Hey, you got to smoke, spit, and listen to some gangster rap.
Yeah, I got to smoke, spit, and listen to gangster rap. So,
all right. Well, I enjoyed being on, and by the way, you guys, you just reminded me of something with that, because I talked about this with Dr. Sanjay Talani. I had some one-on-one time with him. I did record it, but I'm not releasing it. But one of the things that he told me is that investments do not appreciate, and people do not get rich off of their investing. Same thing with their homes. Homes keep pace with inflation. They do not appreciate other than that. And so people only get rich primarily from their own business. And if you're talking about rental real estate, that is a business. They may call it passive income. Believe me, it's not passive either. Someone's got to take care of that toilet. So, if you want to get rich, primarily is, unless you're getting into a high position with a great company and you live well below your means, that's one way to do it. Or you own a business, and real estate is, again, wonderful when you're doing it as an enterprise. Not necessarily you buy your home and expect your home to make you rich. It's not going to happen that way. And so it's just so nice when I hear someone of his acumen, who's got 2 PhDs, 3 master's degrees. The guy is bored. But when I hear that from him, I'm like, it just tells me I'm on track.
And how many times MDRT did you do this year? Like 1,200 times MDRT?
The first time I met him, he did like 376 times $1 Million Round Table. That was in 2022. Last year, he did 1,201 times MDRT. I'm like, amazing. And this year, he's on pace to do even more. Because I messaged him like January 2nd. I said, congratulations, that's amazing. And that's when he said he did 1,201, because all of his other stuff said 1,200. So no, did 1,201. And then when I had him on, last month or 2 months ago for the IARC, he's the only repeat speaker we had. And he said he's doing even better this year.
Wow. I follow his YouTube
guy.
too.
His YouTube, one of the largest YouTube channels of his kind, over 100,000 subscribers. So he's got the silver plaque. Good for him. Maybe I might hit that in 20 years. Who knows? But it's amazing to get that kind of feedback from someone of his caliber and someone who does all this kind of business all around the world. One day I might get there. I find it being curious to get to that level of business. I'm not driven to it yet. I want to do better right here domestically before I try to do international planning.
Definitely. Also in the back chat, I dropped the link for the article written by Michael Ralph. Cheetah Prince Pierre, you guys want to give your closing remarks?
Yeah, man. Most important thing, man, keep your eyes focused, man. Keep your eyes focused on this financial retirement. opportunities for yourself, man, because you got to be able to maximize what's going on right now. Uh, you're gonna be opening up a little bit of market. There's gonna be some tax deficiencies, but somebody ain't gonna win on everything you got going on. But you got to figure out how to win on what's really going on. So, uh, I'll be back in the fold here. A couple more by the end of this month. I'll be back in the game. So, and we're gonna get to work and get these people insured, man, because we need it out here, man. Like I said, I think I was muted or something. I think you didn't hear it. And it's vital to the title and have insurance on yourself and your family. If you have a biblical, this if you have a biblical worldview, you're supposed to have insurance on yourself. That's in the word. You know what I'm saying? If you're a generation inheritance, if you're a good man, does. You understand me? So, and a good person, a good woman does. So you need to take care of your business, you need to take care of your family, because like Justin Black said, take care of your business, or the business take care of you. That's all I got to say. Called probate. You don't want probate in your life.
Exactly.
Or in your beneficiary's life, more
Tell me
accurately.
about it.
Right. Oh, in the beneficiary, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Because I ain't gonna be there on my stuff.
I ain't
It's
gonna be there. No. You rather back there. Yeah,
Thank you, brother.
Don't leave probate as an inheritance to your family.
At all. She, what you got, brother?
And this is someone you really don't like. If there's somebody you really don't like, make him the executor of your estate. I tell you, there is no greater revenge.
Go ahead, Chief.
That'll be good. Somebody I don't like. Oh man, I got somebody right in mind. But to be a student of the game, that's the thing, man. When I say the game, I mean the knowledge, the influence. We having this conversation. How many people gonna have this talk? How many people gonna take this dialogue and share it amongst their kids? That's why I tell Alonzo a couple of times. I've had my kids sit down and listen to some of his luncheons and a couple of videos to kind of get their opinion. Because, their whole thing is, when I get my life insurance, I'm going to be rich. I'm like, rich how? How you going to be rich? What are you going to do with your money? And how this life insurance going to make you rich? And that's when they start to understand, okay, paying out, I have to be dead for this. And then they say, okay, well, I don't have to be dead. So it's all about the learning process. Like I said, they're young. My kids are like 13 now, about to be 14, going into high school. Most parents say, got 4 more years and they get out. Yeah, my kids gonna stay as long as they want. I told them respectfully, I'm giving you the keys to the kingdom. It's up to you if you want to get the knowledge. And that's the whole thing with me. Like I say, teaching them outside of school and everything. So that's the biggest thing. Like I say, keep leaving with that. Just be a student of the game. Learn. Finance, budget, everything.
There it is. Yeah, life insurance won't make them rich, but it can guarantee that they might never be poor as long as they use it and deploy it properly when received. And then if they want to use life insurance to make themselves rich, I'm talking about their own policy. They can leverage their own policy. If they built up those cash values in there could be some amazing things there. But yeah, first and foremost, the death benefit, it will not make you rich. And in fact, insurance companies cannot make you rich. They can only indemnify from loss. So there's financial underwriting guidelines. There's a methodology. Now, what's most interesting, and I don't know why insurance agents aren't doing this. I think that the consumer has the fundamental right that when they're meeting with an insurance agent, they should know the maximum amount they can get according to the underwriting guidelines, and then he can lower it from there. So I was on, I think it was a couple months ago on TikTok, which is the fun time to hear various advice. And this one CFP has been a CFP for over 30 years, and he says you need 6 to 10 times your income. In life insurance. And I'm like, that is malpractice if I've ever heard it. When you're 30 years old, you can have up to 30 times your annual income. So if you're making $100,000, you can have $3 million worth of life insurance that the company will underwrite for you. Why is that? Because if you pass away The 3 million is passed on, and now you can have that paid out. If you're sinking it down, meaning you're spending down your principal, 100,000 a year level, not even adjusted for inflation, that will last 30 years, age 30 to 60. That essentially takes you to the retirement years. That's why that's there. That's the rationale. It's not just because we want a higher premium. Yes, I want you to pay a higher premium. Let me get my bias out there. Yes, I want to sell you a huge policy, but for your benefit, not just mine. Right? Yes, of course I want to do a good job. But if you don't want the 3 million, you want 2 million, fine. It's better than 500,000 that you were probably thinking of originally. I want to start high and go low, then start low and then try to make you think you need more and more and more over time. Then you're going to wonder, gee, why didn't we just do this in the beginning the right way?
Dave, that's a valid point, and I think with a lot of clients that I have, that's a major issue. I've been trying to get, hey, listen, apply for the most. And then what happens is a lot of people get and I'm working on kind of getting past that objection. But a lot of people, oh well, it's going to cost so much. It doesn't matter how much it costs. We just want to know how much you're approved for, because it's what happens. I've gotten a lot of clients who have applied, and very much like you and Mike, I believe in fully underwritten. I don't do that simplified. I almost never do accelerated underwriting. I only do fully underwritten, because you're going to get the best possible price, the closest actual price, right? It's just like with car insurance. You call up State Farm, you get a quote, and then you give them your driver's license, and they run your MVR, and now the price is different. Run my MVR.
It's bait and switch.
Yeah. And so if you apply for the most, what now happens is, hey, you know what? This premium is, your health is better, so you can actually get this 3 million for, $120 a month less than, what you were applying for the 500,000. Arbitrary numbers. Don't stick me to those numbers, folks watching.
I got
you. But,
yeah.
What happens is I've gotten a lot of people who have been downrated, which I appreciate, instead of uprated, because I work with, I'm tending to focus on municipal workers, generally firefighters and corrections officers, and they have to stay in peak physical condition. And so because of that, when they're doing the underwriting, I'm illustrating them standards, and then it's coming back, no, these guys are Superman. So, they have great health, so their price is less. And now instead of having to go through additional underwriting, because now they're like, well, since I got better health, can I get more? Yes, you already qualify for, the 10 bazillion. So now we know you can't afford the 10 bazillion, because that's going to cost you $1 million a day. But maybe you want to take, a million. Well, $1 million is going to cost you, $3,000 a month. So again, arbitrary numbers. But again, now you actually have what you're looking for, as opposed to, oh well, we applied for 500,000, we find out it's less. Now you want to apply for 5 million. Well, now you have to go through more underwriting.
So the important part is that it's an application to get an offer. It's not an invoice to purchase. The invoice to purchase comes after the offer. We got to get the offer first. Let's see if they'll take you. We need them to give us an offer, and then we can adjust it from there. But it's so much easier to adjust down from a high than to increase from a low.
Yep, that's understandable. Yep.
Go ahead, Chief.
I was saying, yep, that's understandable. I looked at that as well, because the biggest issue, everybody's looking at that, counting every penny. And I had this discussion with my wife when we were doing our car insurance, and she's paying the car insurance, and she'll go and say, well, I want it cheaper. And I was like, well, with the cheaper plan, you're only covering, 25,000 worth of damage. If something happens to somebody's car over 25,000, we're responsible for the rest. So let's start high and see what they give us, and we can always go down. But if you start low and go up, then the prices are more astronomical.
Yeah.
I'm going to do something on that, because auto insurance, even so, a lot of life insurance agents weren't duly licensed in terms of life, health, and accident on a property and casualty. Luckily, I ran an all-state agency in Brooklyn, New York. It closed down because, I couldn't, everybody was using it as a payment center as opposed to purchasing new policies. And unlike State Farm, Allstate, once you are under their umbrella, you have to accept all of their clients. Whereas State Farm, you only have to accept your book of business. So, for example, Dave, if you're in my channel and you're a State Farm client, but you're Sheed's client, you got to go to Sheed and pay your policy there. You can't pay your policy at my agency. But if you're Allstate and your Sheed's client, I have to take your policy payment regardless of whose client you are, even though I don't get the renewal commission off of that book of business. But I'm going to go ahead and shut it down, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you guys hit that like, drop a comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you're made aware every time I release new content. And as always, share. Lastly, to contribute to channel growth or to schedule an appointment with a licensed financial professional, the links are in the description of this video. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, wipe ass. Work in progress every day and see success. Wipe ass. Work in progress every day and see success. Wipe ass. Work in progress every day and see success. And remember, folks, when people challenge you, they don't challenge you to challenge you, but they challenge you to challenge you. Accept the challenge. Salute.